My sister-in-law destroyed my wedding dress in one night. My in-laws defended her, calling it a youthful mistake. Furious, my husband froze her tuition money. I, a 27-year-old female, have been married to Bruno, a 29-year-old male, for just over a year. My parents graciously gave me my dream wedding dress, which cost around $8,000. It was exquisite, custom lace, made to me, and even had pieces of my mother's and grandmother's gowns sewed in for sentimental value. I truly adore this dress and intend to keep it forever, perhaps even passing it down one day. After our wedding, I discreetly put it in a garment bag in our guest bedroom closet at home. Bruno's younger sister is Iris, a 19-year-old woman. For background, she is in her first year of college and lives on campus nearby, but we are quite close to her. Bruno contributed significantly to her upbringing. There is a 10-year age difference, and he has even set up a $50,000 education fund for her, which he maintains. Our in-laws aren't wealthy, so Bruno has been contributing to her education and expenditures from the amount he accumulated. Iris is normally a fun kid, although she may be impetuous and spoilt because she is the family's baby. She's gotten into minor scrapes before fender benders, lost things and so on, which her family always forgives readily. I never anticipated she would do what she did. Last weekend was Halloween. My spouse and I did not go out partying. We are homebodies, and we had a nice night in. Iris, on the other hand, had planned a large costume party with her college pals, as well as some bar hopping. Unbeknownst to us, she had stopped by our house earlier that day. She keeps a spare key for emergencies and occasionally crashes at our house because we're close to university. We were not home at the time. I believe I was out grocery shopping while Bruno was at work, but she subsequently admitted she came over to check for costume items. I suppose she thought our house may have something cool she could use. She supposedly found the garment bag containing my wedding dress in the guest room closet. According to her, she assumed it was just an old outfit in the guest closet that I didn't care about. She decided that would make a fantastic angel costume or something for her night out. So, without asking, she wore it to a Halloween party bar. My $8,000 bespoke wedding dress. I had no idea about any of this until the next morning. On Halloween night, I was obliviously handing out candy at home, while my wedding gown was literally out bar hopping with a group of college students. The next day, I went to put away some laundry in the guest closet and saw that the garment bag was unzipped and empty. I completely panicked out. I anxiously searched the house, thinking, no, this can't be missing. I wondered whether I had moved it and forgotten, but I was certain I hadn't. My heart sunk, and I felt dreadful. I called my husband, terrified, and asked whether he had adjusted my dress. He was perplexed like me and answered no. Within minutes my thoughts turned to Iris, because she was the only other person with a key. I called her and got no answer. I texted her and got no response. I even called my mother-in-law to see if she knew anything. She did not pick up either. I was so enraged at this point that I drove to Iris's dorm. She was not there. Her roommate stated that she was gone. A few hours later, Iris called me back. She initially sounded unnaturally joyful, which irritated me. I asked if she had been to our house and if she had taken a white dress from my closet. She replies with a smile. "Oh yeah, I borrowed that white dress in the garment bag, hope you don't mind. It was just hanging there, and I needed something for my outfit." I swear I was trying to hold it together, but I was basically yelling, "You mean my wedding dress?" "That was my wedding dress, Iris." She went quiet for a second, then claimed she thought it was an old dress and didn't realize it was that one. She apologized in a half-hearted way, like sorry. I honestly didn't consider it a big issue. At this moment, I was shivering with rage. I begged her to return it right away, and that taking anything from my house, let alone anything so precious, was completely inappropriate. She texted me that she'd stop by later with it. I wasn't going to wait calmly. I contacted my husband, who was similarly furious, and left work early to return home. When Iris arrived at our place that evening, I was ready to explode. She stepped in with my wedding gown crumpled up in a plastic Target bag, dripping wet. The outfit was crumpled, stained red, and reeked of booze. Tears welled up in my eyes as she removed it. It resembled a murder scene on white satin. The front and sides of the train were covered in large crimson wine or cocktail stains. The fabric at the bottom was ripped in several spots. It was essentially ruined. I lost it. I burst into tears and screamed at her, wondering what the heck she was thinking. My spouse was also outraged. He genuinely went silent and angry upon seeing the garment. Iris began crying, claiming she was sorry that it was a mistake. She stated that a drunk female at the bar ran into her and spilled a drink all over her dress, and that the rip occurred when she caught it on something. She continued insisting she had no idea it was my wedding dress and assumed it was a spare old garment or a costume item. I call BS. It looks exactly like a bridal gown. Plus, who keeps an $8,000 dress lying around unless it's important? Between my tears and my husband's deathly silence, she became defensive. Her apologies evolved into excuses and blame. How was I supposed to know? You left it in the closet just like any other dress, and it's not like I did it on purpose, I yelled, making it clear to anyone with eyes that this was no cheap party costume. How could she have thought that was just a random dress given the quality and detail? She continued apologizing, but she also had the audacity to be snippy and claim I was overreacting because it was only a frock. I informed her it wasn't just any dress, it was my wedding gown. My parents paid a fortune for it and she had no right to take it, even if it was $10 from a thrift store. I was furious and in tears when my husband finally spoke out and told her she needed to leave. Iris sobbed as she walked out the door. I will admit that, in the heat of the moment, as she was leaving, I yelled at her that she owed me $8,000 for the dress. She screamed back that she doesn't have that much money and I'm unreasonable to ask a 19-year-old to pay that. Well, you better figure something out, I said, slamming the door. Not my best moment, but I was utterly beside myself. That night, my husband and I sat with a destroyed dress, completely upset. I cried. He was reassuring me, but I could see he was angry and hurt. This garment meant a lot to me and my family. My husband, who is generally extremely calm and generous with his sister, was so angry that he told me, I'm not going to spend another dime of my money on her until she makes this right. I should point out that I made no suggestions concerning her college fund or money at all. This was entirely his reaction. The next day, my mother-in-law called me back. She had seen my missed call and had clearly heard what Iris had said. Mother-in-law was first kind, asking what had happened, and whether I was okay. I described how torn my outfit was and how furious we were. Mother-in-law apologized for what happened, but then tried to protect Iris. She responded something like, Iris is really sorry. She's young, and she truly didn't realize it was your wedding gown. It was a dumb mistake, but we all make mistakes. I informed her that this was a serious breach of trust, and I wasn't going to ignore it. I responded, at minimum, the dress needs to be paid for, or replaced. Mother-in-law became defensive and said, the dress was gifted to you by your parents, so it's not like you're out of pocket $8,000, which is such a strange thing to say as if it's about money. It carries sentimental worth. She then actually remarked, it's not like you can wear it again, dear. This made me turn red. I snapped back that that was not the point. I didn't intend to wear it again, but it was mine and contained a lot of value, so I had every right to keep it spotless. I also told her how hurt my parents would be if they found out. I have not even been able to inform them yet. I am dreading it. At this time, mother-in-law turned to discussing how terrified Iris is because Bruno, my husband, is so upset with her. Apparently, Iris fled to her parents, saying that we hate her and that her brother is attempting to ruin her life because of a mistake. Iris's mother-in-law stated that she is hysterical because she believes Bruno would withdraw her education funds. So I imagine Iris informed her, or perhaps her mother-in-law suggested it. I informed my mother-in-law that, really, I support my husband's decision. He is the one who saved that money for her, and if he believes this is the right penalty, until she accepts responsibility, so be it. I said that that might be the only thing that makes the gravity of the situation clear. Mother-in-law became enraged, claiming that I was unconcerned about how a young girl would make a mistake and that I was willing to ruin her life. She stated we were all family, and I should have a heart because Iris had no intention of ruining my clothing. I informed my mother-in-law that having a heart is one thing, but accepting the consequences is another. If someone, whether family or not, destroys anything exceedingly valuable due to their negligence, they must make amends. I also pointed out that Iris has never volunteered to do anything other than say sorry. There was no mention of how she planned to pay for it or work it off. Nothing. She only cried crocodile tears and expected us to forgive her right away. The wife's mother asked, where is she going to get that kind of money? You know she doesn't have a job. I responded, not my problem. Maybe you and Phil can help her, or she can take out a small loan since it's her doing. The call concluded with mother-in-law claiming I was being unfair, and that she would talk to Bruno shortly. My hubby absolutely supports me here. To be clear, he is just as angry, if not more. In fact, he's so angry that he's told his parents he's freezing the college fund until Iris properly handles the situation, whether by paying for the dress or coming up with a solution we can all agree on. That $50,000 isn't legally hers yet. It's essentially an account in his name that he put up specifically for her. He intended to use it semester after semester for her tuition and expenses. He has already paid for the current semester, but he has warned her and our mother-in-law that he will not pay for the next semester or any future payments unless the dress issue is resolved. The entire family is now in uproar. Iris is distraught and continually contacting me, imploring that we do not take away her education. She apologized a million times, but then called me callous for allowing my husband to do this to her. My mother-in-law and even other extended family members, such as an aunt, are telling us that we're being very harsh, and that I'm the asshole for prioritizing a dress over her academic future. One aunt claimed in a group conversation that I'm essentially severing my relationship with SIL over an item of clothes. All of this turmoil is really affecting me. I feel bad that my spouse is feuding with his sister and relatives because of my clothing. On the other hand, I am still furious over what she did. And I believe that people learn best when they face real-world repercussions. We've provided her a road to make things right, and she's simply crying because it's too difficult. If it were up to me, I'd settle for her paying a few $100s for expert cleaning and preservation, as well as a deep, heartfelt apology, and perhaps some volunteer work to teach her the worth of things. But my husband is determined that we should not back down until she genuinely understands the gravity of the situation, which, in his opinion, means either paying up the cash or losing her college money. Am I an asshole for being so offended and refusing to forgive and forget? Update 1. Wow. This blew up bigger than I imagined. I'm glad for all of your responses. I've been reading the judgments and comments, which have been both validating and difficult to read at times. Thank you for your perspectives. The overall agreement is that I'm NTA, not the asshole, which made me feel better because my family had been making me doubt myself. A lot has transpired since my last post, so I've got a lot of updates on the issue. I'll also answer a few typical queries below. 1 question. Why was my wedding dress in the guest closet? How did Iris not recognize it as my wedding dress? After the wedding, I placed my gown in its garment bag in our guest room closet because our master closet is small and I didn't want my husband to see the large bag all the time. It took up a lot of space, and as foolish as it sounds, I was keeping it hidden in case we had an event where I could surprise him by wearing it again, such as an anniversary photo. The guest room closet seemed like a safe and quiet area. It was clearly not presented as a random costume. It arrived in a genuine bridal garment bag from the boutique. I suppose Iris has never worked with wedding outfits. But I still don't understand how she didn't recognize my gown. It has my name sewn into it on the inside. She stated she never fully opened it until she arrived at her room, and it simply looked like a lovely white outfit. I'm doubtful, but this is her narrative. 2. Did Iris have authorization to be in our house and take things? She has an extra key in case of an emergency, or when she wants a quiet spot to study. But we've always been fine with her stopping by, even though she typically asks beforehand. In this scenario, she didn't request to come over or steal anything, so, no, she didn't have authorization to take the dress or any clothes. She has occasionally borrowed a shirt or jewelry with my consent, but she typically asks. It was completely inappropriate to grab something without first texting. 3. What's up with the $50,000 college fund? To clarify, that money belongs totally to my husband. He began saving it when he took a high-paying job a few years ago. His parents have always struggled financially, and he is extremely protective of Iris. So he saved enough money for her to attend in-state college for 4 years, which he maintained in a separate account under his name. It was never technically her money, trust fund, or anything. It's essentially his personal savings set aside for her tuition. He has been paying her school fees directly from that account each semester, so, legally and morally, it is his money, and he has the right to withhold it. My in-laws didn't contribute to the fund. They support some of her living expenses when possible, but not tuition. 4. Have I informed my parents, the ones who purchased the dress? After reading some advice, I opted not to tell them every information until I knew whether the clothing could be preserved. My mother would be upset and outraged. As of this update, I had informed my mother that the dress had been damaged and that we were working to repair it. She was unhappy, but I minimized the situation to avoid further stressing my parents. If it comes to it, and we need to seek repayment, I'll have to give them the complete truth. For the time being, I am dealing with it in tandem with my husband. 5. Can the dress be rescued or cleaned? The day after the incident, we took the dress to a well-known specialty wedding cleaner. They warned us that red wine on delicate fabric, especially after it is set, is one of the worst stains. They've been working on it, but it doesn't seem hopeful. Even if the stains are mostly removed, the fabric is weakened where it was soaked, and the shredded layers of chiffon and tulle are difficult to restore to their previous condition. We expect an update from them soon. Best case scenario, it will be wearable, but with subtle stains and repaired seams. In the worst case scenario, it is irreversibly damaged. In any case, the gown will not be as pristine as it once was. Okay, now let's see what's transpired since I posted about the family gathering. My husband and I went to my in-laws' place 2 days after the incident, and 1 day after my original post, to have a serious conversation. Mother-in-law invited us, suggesting it would be beneficial for all of us to talk face to face. I was still enraged and wounded, but we agreed because everyone had been talking over each other on calls, texts. When we arrived, Phil, father-in-law, and mother-in-law were present, and Iris had returned from college for the weekend. We all sat in the living room. I allowed my husband take the lead because it was his family, but I also contributed significantly. Iris appeared red-eyed, as if she had been crying. She didn't actually look at me. Mother-in-law began by saying something like, "We're all family here, let's remember we love each other, and try to resolve this calmly." My husband immediately said, "I'll be calm as long as I hear some acknowledgement of what actually went wrong here." He was clearly still enraged, but holding it together. He opened out to Iris. "What were you thinking? Explain to me how you thought taking any dress from our house without asking was okay." Iris began sniffling and said, "I don't know. I just thought it was a party costume. I didn't think it was a big deal." I couldn't help but respond that it was a big deal, and even if it wasn't my wedding dress, going into someone's closet and taking clothes without permission is basic disrespect. She murmured, "I apologize." Honestly, that seemed more like a whine than a real statement. My husband persisted, stating her lack of judgment had shocked and saddened him. He reminded her of how much I cherished that dress, and that she, of all people, should have known that she was at our wedding, had seen the wedding photos and so on, so she had seen the dress before. Mother-in-law interjected at this point. "She knows she messed up. Bruno, she's apologized. We need to move forward." I jumped in and said, "Moving forward means figuring out how to make this right. Saying sorry doesn't magically restore my dress." I was trying to stay composed, but I was still hurt. I replied, "I haven't even been able to fully break the news to my mom because it's such a damn shame." Phil, who had been quiet, sighed and asked, "What exactly do you want to happen now?" I responded, "At the very least, the cost of the dress should be reimbursed or a replacement obtained. I know it's difficult, but that's what happens when you ruin something you can't fix." I also said I'd be willing to accept a good faith effort, such as if Iris could pay half now and half later or something reasonable, but an attempt needed to be made. Iris began crying again when she learned the price of the outfit, and her mother-in-law appeared distressed. The wife's mother said, "You know she doesn't have that kind of money. She's just a student. How do you expect her to come up with $8,000? My spouse responded before I could. "Maybe by getting a job, or taking out a loan, or you helping. I don't care how. That's not our problem to figure out for her. People take responsibility by problem solving, not by expecting the wrong party to eat the loss." Mother-in-law became upset and said, "We don't have that kind of money either. This whole thing is just... It was a mistake. Can't we find a less extreme solution?" She turned to me and tried to bargain. "What if we pay for the dry cleaning and restoration attempts, and maybe a little extra for your trouble? But $8,000 is just impossible. The clothing could be beyond repair, and a little extra for your trouble seemed like they were dismissing this as a trivial nuisance." I told her so. I appreciate the gesture, but a few $100s and a cleaning solution won't undo what happened. If the cleaner is unable to thoroughly repair it, we will discuss replacing it, or reimbursing the cost. That was a custom dress. Replacing it is not as straightforward as purchasing an off-the-rack bridal gown in that design, which can cost several $1,000s. Iris exclaimed through sobs, "I don't have that money," and began crying into her hands. She responded, "If I had known it was your wedding dress, I never would have touched it. I'm sorry, but I can't afford this. And now I'm going to lose my college money. It's not fair. I didn't do it on purpose." That's when my hubby snapped. He spoke loudly for the first time that evening to express his opinion. "You're right. You didn't do it on purpose, but you did do it. And now you're more concerned about your college fund than the fact that you seriously screwed up and hurt someone. You're calling it not fair that you face consequences? What do you think is fair then? That my wife just sucks it up and everyone acts like you didn't ruin something irreplaceable?" Iris simply cried harder and repeated, "I said I was sorry." Mother-in-law wrapped her arm around Iris and began crying, telling my husband, "Please Bruno, she is sorry. This is all just too much. You can't take away her education. Think of her future. He responded, I am thinking of her future. I'm thinking that if we let this go with zero consequences, then in her future, she'll think she can do whatever and hide behind, but I said sorry. Real life doesn't work that way. If a stranger wrecked her car, would she be okay if they just said sorry and walked away? Why should this be any different? My husband responded with the following statement. Son, I get it. I really do. But you have to understand, we can't conjure money out of thin air. Neither can she. Punishing her by pulling the college fund, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot too. Do you really want your sister to potentially drop out or take on massive loans? Is that what you want for her life? My spouse responded, what I want is for my sister to take ownership of the harm she caused. I'm not asking for something unreasonable. I'm basically telling her, until you show that you are making this right, I am not going to keep funding you. If she chooses to drop out instead of maybe taking a temporary loan or working part-time to pay for this, that's her choice. She's not a child. She's an adult who made an adult mistake. At this point, I could tell my spouse was fatigued from walking in circles. I was too. We were at their house for almost an hour, and it felt like nothing was getting resolved, just the same disagreements. The family begged for mercy, but we stood steadfast, because mercy means no accountability. It was stressful and emotionally demanding. I finally spoke out with an idea to break the standoff. I offered that we all spend a few days to unwind and perhaps look into answers. For example, if there is a way to get a replacement dress for less than $8,000, such as a second-hand one or a sample sale, which could lower the cost. I also mentioned that I would be happy to entertain a payment plan from Iris over a couple of years, or that she could do something like work for me, as I have a little business, to pay it off at a reasonable pace. But I reiterated that the bottom reason is that we need some assurance from her and my in-laws that they will deal with the financial consequences of her conduct. The wife's mother commented, we'll discuss it among ourselves, but please in the meantime, Bruno, don't do anything hasty about the college fund. She's got to register for classes for next semester soon. My husband politely responded, that depends on Iris. If she can come up with a real plan to make this right, I'm willing to reconsider. If not, she might have to skip a semester. That's on her. We ended the meeting soon after. Everyone was upset and emotionally vulnerable. My husband and I left, and while driving home, we just sat in silence for a bit to unwind. So that's where things stand following the face-to-face conversation. There is no definitive resolution yet. My in-laws and Iris know we mean business, and we're waiting to see if they have a proposal. Given their reactions thus far, I'm not optimistic about their plans. But we'll see. After we went home, Iris texted me an apology. It appeared that she, or perhaps her mother-in-law, had given it some coaching. She stated she was deeply sorry for not asking and for damaging such a crucial part of my life, and that she never intended to upset me. She says she's afraid and doesn't know how to repair it, but she's willing to do whatever it takes to keep our support for her education. She also expressed guilt by adding that the entire situation makes her feel like a dreadful person and she is having panic attacks about her future. I haven't responded yet. I'm giving myself some space because I'm still angry, and I don't want to say anything I'll regret. Bruno and I are currently maintaining our ground. We have made it clear that we will not be sweeping this under the rug. She must find a means to partially compensate for the harm, or else she may face significant, life-altering consequences. The ball is in their court. Update 2, a week later. Hello again. Thank you to everyone who shared their advice and perspectives. Many of you sought updates, and even projected what would happen next. You were right on a couple things. It has been roughly a week since my last update. Things between my husband and his family worsened over that time, before perhaps improving. Also, we received reports from the wedding dress cleaners, and they are not favorable. First, the clothing. The specialized cleaner tried their best, but the clothing was damaged. The crimson stains have faded significantly, but are still clearly visible. In some areas, the white fabric is permanently colored pinkish-brown. The material also shrank and warped slightly when wet for an extended period of time. The tears can be fixed, but the dress will never look the same. They tried one round of treatment, and the store owner advised me that more vigorous attempts could degrade the cloth much more. In short, I need to accept that my wedding gown will never be the same. They collected a modest price for the endeavor and unfortunately returned the clothing to me, still damaged and torn. I really cried again when I picked it up, which was awkward in front of the shopkeeper, but she was very nice. She remarked, "This happens more often than you'd think. Red wine is a nightmare on wedding dresses." So, yes, the dress is officially ruined. That revelation made me even more convinced that Iris or my in-laws must pay to replace it or compensate for its value. The cleaner issued a letter saying the damage and that restoration to the original is impossible, which will be beneficial if we pursue legal action or file an insurance claim. Some of you proposed it, but more on that later. Now after the big conference, my in-laws were generally quiet for a few days. I believe they were talking among themselves and giving everyone a break. My husband and I tried to have a drama-free weekend. We even went on a trek to clear our minds, which helped somewhat. However, the hush shattered swiftly on Monday. What occurred on Monday? Iris apparently told a few friends and cousins a warped version of the story, which circulated on social media. I started getting strange vibes from a couple of my own friends, who asked what was going on after seeing posts. It turns out that someone, perhaps Iris or a friend of hers, wrote on Instagram, "When your own brother would rather see you drop out of college than forgive you for a mistake. Family can be cruel." It didn't expressly say the clothing, but anyone nearby would know it was about us. I was annoyed because she hadn't highlighted the part when she literally created everything by doing something stupid. It felt like she was looking for sympathy and portraying my spouse as a villain. Well, that worked to some extent. One of their cousins, with whom we are not really close, said something like, "Yuck, I heard. That's so harsh. You don't deserve that." And a college friend of hers said, "They're supposed to be your family. If my sister did that, I'd disown her." My spouse and I discussed it. He was outraged that she was posting personal family matters online for strangers and extended relatives to discuss about. He commented on her post from his account with something like, "Interesting how you left out the part where you stole and ruined something irreplaceable that belonged to us. Actions have consequences, Iris." He rarely indulges in social media drama, but he was furious. She erased his comment in minutes and then blocked him and me on Instagram, most likely proactively. Then my husband began receiving calls and texts from a few family members, most notably an aunt and his grandmother, asking what was going on and why people were claiming he was forcing Iris to drop out of school. So he had to reveal the true story to them. The aunt, who had been lecturing me in the group chat, changed her mind after hearing the complete context. She was frightened by Iris's conduct. Grandmother too. They both basically told my husband, "We're so sorry. We didn't know the whole story. Of course she should face consequences. We'll talk to your mom." I then noticed that Iris's ambiguous posts were vanished from another account that I use. I believe the family elders told her to stop it, but the harm was done in terms of raising drama. This whole situation began to feel like a family quarrel, which I never wanted. I was irritated with Iris for trying to elicit pity, rather than quietly working on a solution. Following the social media incident, my mother-in-law called my husband. I was also on the call, listening. She sounded fatigued and may have been weeping. She said the following. "We've talked it over. We will try to get together some money to help repay for the dress, but we can't do $8,000. We could maybe do $4,000 if you give us some time. Would that be enough for you to stop all this and not hold back her college funds?" I jumped in. I said, "We appreciate them stepping up with an offer. If they could truly gather $4,000, that's a start. But it wouldn't fully cover a replacement dress of similar quality." Still, I said I was willing to consider that as an acceptable resolution, if and only if Iris herself contributed something, either money she earns or an official commitment to pay the remaining balance over time. And most crucially, a genuine apologies for assuming ownership. My husband agreed and said that if they did that, he'd release the majority of the college fund again, with some restrictions. He continued, "I want it understood that this isn't us putting a price on the issue and washing our hands. It's about Iris learning she can't just do things without making amends." Mother-in-law consented, saying they meant for Iris to repay us gradually for whatever sum they had fronted. I had a feeling they were stretching themselves to even consider $4,000. I'm not sure if they'd take out a loan or draw from retirement, but it sounded like they were scrambling. We urged them to put together a clear plan, such as a payment deadline, and to have Iris write and sign her share as well. Basically, we wanted it in writing. It may sound formal for family, but after all of the back and forth, we wanted it on writing to avoid future misunderstandings. My husband stated that if they do this, he will unfreeze the college fund so she can register for the next semester on schedule. The mother-in-law was agreeable. She sounded happy that we weren't insisting on the entire $8,000 immediately. We hung up with the agreement that they would create a plan and we would examine it. Throughout all, I hadn't spoken directly to Iris since the text she sent after the meeting. But approximately an hour after my talk with my mother-in-law, Iris sent me an email. It really astonished me. It was thoughtful and sincerely apologetic. She apologized for trying to gain sympathy online, for initially downplaying what she did, and for violating my confidence. She stated she awoke that day thinking about how she'd feel if someone wrecked something so important to her, and she understood why I was so angry. She also stated that she is willing to work as hard as necessary to repay us, even if it takes years, and that she values her relationship with us more than some silly partying her words. She stated that she was first concerned about losing the college fund, but she now understands why we took such a strong stance. She expressed regret for causing a conflict in our family and bringing drama to our door. It came across as sincere. Both my husband and I were impressed by the tone. This was a significant departure from Iris's previous protective, avoidant behavior. I responded to her email, which didn't feel like a phone conversation, and thanked her for really apologizing. I told her that I accept her apologies and appreciate her accepting responsibility and writing. I stated that I am still very sorry about losing my dress, but I am hoping that we will all be able to move on if she follows through on her promise to make reparations. I didn't scold her or anything. I remained calm and stated that I am willing to work with her and her parents to get a fair conclusion. So things appeared to be moving in the right direction until one more mini drama occurred. Of course, some of you considered insurance. So I looked into whether my homeowner's insurance or a specific wedding coverage would cover the dress. I realized that I did not have a special rider on our insurance for pricey items like the dress, which I should have had. But I had underestimated its value at the time. However, my coverage may cover theft or vandalism, which are crucial words for personal property. So, just out of curiosity, I said it to my husband in front of my sister, not Sil, who was visiting. My sister casually replied, "Well, it was effectively stolen and vandalized by your SEL." We laughed. But evidently my phone's voice assistant activated and captured part of the discussion in a voice text that I was in the middle of sending to mother-in-law. I was texting her about something unrelated just before. I didn't know where it had recorded the excerpt when I pushed send. My mother-in-law received a text that partially quoted my sister, stating something like, "It was effectively stolen and vandalized by your SIL." Oh my. Mother-in-law was upset to find the word stolen and vandalized. She immediately called, unhappy that we were referring to it as stealing. I instantly replied that it was out of context, and that we were only discussing basic insurance topics. I am not accusing Iris of stealing in a criminal sense. After I explained, my mother-in-law calmed down a little, but I could tell she was worried that we may sue or pursue charges. I informed her that we prefer to address things within the family, and that the comment was not intended to be interpreted as a legal charge. That was embarrassing, but the issue was averted. Anyway, my in-laws and Iris are currently working on a written agreement. They suggested that she will most likely repay us $4,000 over time because they are covering the original $4,000, for a total of $8,000. To be honest, I assume they'll just pay the most of it and expect her to repay them later, but either way is good. We haven't seen the paperwork yet, but they stated it would be ready before the weekend. My husband has agreed that once we receive the signed promise, and probably a down payment of the first chunk they indicated giving us $2,000 in a week or two as a show of good faith, he will unlock her education fund for the next semester. We also talked about repercussions other than money, because we want her to learn from this experience rather than just throwing money at it. We haven't decided on this yet, but I suggested she perform some charity work or take a financial literacy course so she learns the worth of $8,000 and how to acquire it. That may be too much of a parental request, and I will not die on that hill, but it is something I intend to suggest when the time is appropriate. Finally, the money and a genuine apology were my main priorities. Anything above that is considered a bonus. For the time being, it appears that we are working on a tentative resolution. My sister disowned me after I bankrolled the family for years. So I exposed the secrets that broke her marriage, then ignored her begging letter. How did I go from being not family to being their only lifeline? You ever wonder what happens when you stop being the family fixer and start being the one who says enough? Let me show you. I showed up with a bottle of Cabernet, one of the nice ones from my stash. I even wrapped it with a bow, like an idiot, like I believed this year would be different. The porch light at Megan's place flickered once as I rang the bell. The smell of pine and cinnamon hit me as the door creaked open, and Mom's voice carried through the hallway. "Mara's here," she sang out, fake cheer dripping off every syllable. Inside, the house looked like a Hallmark card. Warm lights, crackling fire, the whole thing. Ilara was by the tree, shaking a box with her name on it. My father didn't bother getting up from the recliner. Tessa smiled like we were on camera. "You're early," she said. Must be nice having no kids and no real responsibilities. I smiled politely and placed the wine on the table. Better early than dramatic, I said, trying to sound playful, but she didn't laugh. Dinner was already set: carved ham, roasted vegetables, perfectly folded napkins. Megan always knew how to stage a picture-perfect disaster. I took my seat near the end of the table. Small talk buzzed like a bad radio station. Static tension. Half-hearted chuckles. No one asked how I'd been. No one mentioned my promotion last quarter. It was clear they were just waiting for something. And then it happened. Tessa stood up, wineglass in hand, wearing that lipstick she only used when she wanted to win. Before we cut the pie, she said, I think it's time we got honest. I looked up, my stomach turned before she even finished the sentence. She glanced around the table like a smug senator. We voted and we've decided you're no longer part of this family. I blinked. At first I thought I misheard her, or maybe she was joking, but Mom nodded in agreement. It was bound to happen sooner or later, she said, buttering her roll. Damon stared at his plate, silent. To clinked his fork against his wineglass. It's for your own good. Alara giggled. She thought it was a game. And my dad, he didn't even meet my eyes, just shifted in his chair and muttered, this kind of tension isn't healthy. I felt like I had left my body. Their words didn't pierce me like knives. It was colder than that, like standing outside in a storm with no coat, no one coming to let you in. I stayed quiet for a moment, forcing myself to breathe. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a thick folder. Their laughter stopped. The sound it made when I set it on the table was sharp. Paper meeting wood with a dull thump that cut deeper than any curse. What's that? Tessa asked, the smirk twitching at the corners of her mouth. I leaned back. Since we're being honest, I figured I'd come prepared. She grabbed it like she expected confetti to fly out. Her fingers flipped through the pages one by one. The smile drained from her face: bank transfers, receipts, email screenshots, a list of every time they called, texted, begged. A timeline that screamed what I'd swallowed for years. Then she hit page 23, a hotel bill from Charleston, 2 nights, 1 room, signed with her name and someone else's. Veda. She shoved the folder away like it was covered in filth. You psychopath, she hissed. You've been spying. I've been documenting. There's a difference. Damon pulled the folder toward him, started reading. His mouth moved, but no words came out. My mother finally said, how dare you weaponize your help like this? I looked at her, calm now, colder than I'd ever felt. You called it help, but to you, I was an ATM, a therapist, a guilt sponge. I stood up, my legs were shaking, but I held my ground. You said I wasn't family. I scanned the faces around the table. Then maybe you won't need your fallback anymore. No one spoke. Tessa's glass tilted in her hand. Alara asked if we were still playing the game. I walked to the door, grabbing my coat. No tears, no begging, no second chances. Just me and the storm. I finally let them feel. Thunder rumbled in the distance as I stepped outside, the cold air hitting harder than I expected. The door didn't slam behind me. It clicked shut, almost polite, like even the house was too tired to argue. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Let them sit in the silence they carved. The door clicked shut behind me, but their voices bled through the walls. I didn't stop walking, not down the steps, not across the yard. My boots crunched the frost-coated grass like it owed me something. I made it halfway to the street when I heard her. You think you're better than us? Megan's voice, shrill and shaking. That folder proves you're just obsessive sick. I didn't turn around, but I heard the folder hit the wall inside, pages scattering like fire and dry grass. You're a damn parasite, Mara, she screamed. Then silence. Then Damon. Who the hell is Veda? That stopped me. I turned, just slightly, enough to see him standing near the dining room window, the folder in his hand now. His eyes weren't just scanning, they were searching, digging. Don't do this here, Megan snapped, but her voice had lost its edge. I said, who is Veda? Damon didn't shout. He never had to. His voice just dropped low and steady, like a threat with a tie on. My mother stood up suddenly. This isn't the time or the place. The hell it isn't, Damon shot back. You all wanted honesty, you all clapped, now we're being honest. I leaned against the mailbox and listened as my sister's perfect night unraveled. She's a friend, Tessa muttered. Damon read another line aloud. 3 nights, Ocean View Suite, Charleston, signed under your joint account, Tessa Adams and Veda Quinn. A friend, huh? She was helping me with a project. Stop. Just stop. His voice broke. Just enough for me to hear the betrayal sink in. You lied to me, and you lied to her. I didn't need to watch the rest. I knew that tone. It was the sound of a marriage unraveling in real time. No fireworks, just the quiet crack of trust splitting open. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, fingers trembling not from the cold. A new voicemail, unknown number. I pressed play. Ms. Adams, this is Ewan from Marlowe and Fisher. Your father asked me to reach out regarding the family trust. He said you recently revoked certain authorizations he'd like to discuss. Fallback options. I hung up. Another call came through immediately. Same number. Ms. Adams, Ewan said again when I answered. Sorry to catch you like this, your father insisted I contact you. He's under the impression that you're still listed on several fallback clauses as power of attorney. Not anymore, I replied flatly. I signed off. It was finalized. Well, Ewan continued, he claims that unless you manually update Clause 14b through a separate filing, some assets still default through you. He's asking for a meeting. I laughed. A short, sharp exhale that wasn't amused in the slightest. Tell him I don't hold that power anymore, and even if I did, I wouldn't lift a finger. Understood, he said. Would you like us to notify him in writing? No, I said. Let him stew. I ended the call and stared at the quiet street. A few houses down, someone had one of those plastic reindeer sets lit up, the red nose blinking on and off like it was mocking me. Behind me, the house had gone still again. Not peaceful, just stunned. I took one last look and then walked. Not because I needed air, because staying would have meant seeing their faces after the truth scorched through their lies, and I'd already spent a lifetime swallowing ash. My hands weren't shaking anymore, my breath came even, and I knew, as sure as I knew my name, that they didn't break me tonight. They just proved me right. I didn't have a destination, just distance. Distance from that house, from them, from the wreckage of what used to pass for family. I kept walking until the cold sobered the last of the adrenaline, until the sting in my chest dulled to something I could carry. Then I got in the car, started driving. Not toward anything. Just away. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove without thinking, past neighborhoods still glowing with lights, through old streets where the pavement cracked in the same places it always had. My tires eventually found their way to the gravel shoulder by the lake, Dad's favorite spot back when I was too young to understand what peace actually meant. The water looked like glass under the moonlight. Not a ripple, not a breeze, just stillness. I cut the engine and let the silence settle around me like a second skin. I used to come here when I needed clarity, before job deadlines and overdraft notices, before they learned I could be counted on for everything, and punished for the same reason. I leaned back in the driver's seat and stared at the black expanse ahead. The cold crept in through the cracked window, but I didn't roll it up. My mind didn't drift far before it landed right back on them. Not tonight, not Christmas, but every single time they asked and I said yes. There was the time Dad called at 6:12 a.m. Just a little help, honey. The dental work wasn't covered after all. He said it like I'd offered first. Then came Mom's bill for a card I didn't open, for items I'd never seen. Just this once, she'd whispered, like it was a secret between friends. Megan's emergency therapy turned out to be energy healing with a life coach in California. I wired the money without asking, thinking maybe it was real, maybe she really was in trouble. Then came the tuition fees for Alara. We wouldn't ask, Leora said over the phone. But the scholarship didn't come through, and you know how tight things are. No one offered to pay anything back. No one ever asked if I could afford it. The gratitude when it came was hollow, wrapped in guilt and expectation. Only you can help. You're the smart one. You have a good job. We don't. It always ended the same way, with my bank account lighter, my breath shorter, and my silence mistaken for consent. Once at a birthday party for Alara, I brought a book as a gift, something I'd loved as a child. Tessa looked at it, then at me and muttered, I guess we all give what we can. They used to tell me I was the backbone of the family. I didn't realize they meant the one carrying all the weight until I couldn't stand upright anymore. I blinked, snapping back to the present, still gripping the steering wheel with both hands. My phone lit up again. This time it was a memory. 3 years ago. A photo of Dad in a hospital bed, looking pitiful and pale. The caption from Mom read, We're at the ER, don't know how long he has. Please come. I remembered flying home that day, canceling meetings, moving a project deadline, rushing straight from the airport to the hospital in heels. I'd expected machines beeping, monitors, maybe an IV. Instead, I found him watching a football game and complaining about the soup being cold. "Oh, they were just being cautious," Mom said with a wave of her hand. "Better safe than sorry, right?" Safe. Sure. I remember sitting in the waiting room afterward, staring at the vending machine and realizing that my emergency was never really their emergency. I was the emergency contact, the fixer, the backup plan, not the daughter, never the daughter. I turned off my phone and stepped out of the car, walking down the worn path to the edge of the lake. The wind cut across the water, numbing my face. I didn't care. For the first time all night, I wasn't angry, I wasn't sad, I was just done. They never needed me, I whispered into the dark. They needed what I could give, and I gave too much. 3 days passed like breath held too long. I barely left my apartment, except to walk the dog and pretend normal still lived in my building. Asheville had turned bitterly cold, the kind that cracked your skin and crept into your bones, even when wrapped in wool. The lake hadn't offered answers, but at least it hadn't asked anything of me. Then Leora texted, "Let's meet, just us. No pressure." I stared at the message longer than I should have. My first instinct was to delete it. My second was to ask, "What do you want now?" But curiosity, fool that it is, won. I chose a public place, a tiny cafe tucked on the quieter end of downtown. No risk of a scene, no audience from family, just two sisters playing pretend in a setting too cozy for confrontation. She was already there when I arrived, bundled in a cream coat, hands around a latte that had lost its steam. She looked up, eyes soft. Too soft. "I'm glad you came," she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. I sat across from her without taking off my scarf. "Let's not waste time." Leora smiled tightly. "Okay, look, about Christmas, that wasn't what it looked like." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh? Did someone hack your voice and make you say I wasn't family?" She flinched, just slightly. It was heat of the moment. People were emotional. Megan was pushing hard and you went along with it, I finished. Leora didn't deny it. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. My stomach turned. "What is that?" I asked, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. She slid it across the table. "It's paperwork. Legal stuff. Power of attorney documents. Dad wants to reinstate you. We figured maybe if we handled this first, we could talk easier." I didn't touch it. "So this is what you meant by no pressure," I said, voice flat. "Mara, we're all tired," she whispered. "You've always been the capable one. You understand how these things work. We're scared." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You don't get to cut me out and then put me back in when it's convenient." Leora looked away. "It's not like that." I pushed the envelope back toward her. "It's exactly like that. You all clapped when Megan made her little speech. You toasted to my absence, and now what? You're here because Dad's scared of losing control of the trust fund." She didn't answer. "I'm not your legal shield anymore," I said, standing, "and I'm definitely not your emotional one." I left her sitting there, staring at the untouched folder, latte now completely cold. That night I couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed once. It was a message from Damon. "I owe you an apology. I saw what Tessa was doing for years, and I said nothing. I told myself staying quiet was neutral. It wasn't. It made it worse." Another message followed. "You weren't crazy. You were just alone." I stared at the screen, stunned. Damon had always been silent, detached, Switzerland in every family feud. But now, this. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Thank you," I typed it, then deleted it. I locked my phone and lay there, eyes tracing the cracks in the ceiling, mind loops. The silence in the room felt louder after Damon's messages, and just as I was starting to make sense of that shift, the screen lit up again. The sun wasn't even up when my phone lit up again. "Tessa." No greeting, no punctuation, just, "You've gone too far. If something happens to Mom or Dad, it's on you." I stared at the screen for a full minute, waiting for something else, context, clarification, even a fake apology. Nothing came. Just that one line, threat dressed as concern, a sentence so sharp it could slit guilt wide open if I let it. I didn't reply. Instead, I padded into the kitchen, flipped on the light, and poured myself a cup of coffee that tasted like metal. My hand trembled, not from fear, but from the pressure building just under my skin. By the time I placed the mug on the table, a hairline crack had already formed in the ceramic. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted a reset button. They wanted the version of me that shut up and paid up, that smiled through insults, that kept peace by erasing myself. But I was no longer that version. By 9 a.m., I'd typed out a message to the family group chat 5 different ways, deleted every draft. None of them felt like enough. Until I hit record. My voice didn't shake this time. "I am not your villain," I said. "I am your consequence." I let that sit for a second before continuing. For years, I stayed silent because I thought keeping the family together mattered more than telling the truth. I absorbed the jabs, the manipulation, the financial sinkhole you all made out of me. I justified it in my head, told myself you were struggling. But I see it now, you weren't struggling, you were feeding off me. I paused. I won't play the scapegoat anymore, and if you try to smear me, threaten me, or twist this back on me, I will go public with everything, every receipt, every recording, every document in that folder and more. I'm not bluffing. I ended the message and pressed send, no dramatics, just clarity. The silence that followed was almost loud. 2 hours later, my phone pinged again. It was Corinne. I didn't know it was that bad. At first I assumed she meant someone else. Then came another message. "I'm sorry for clapping. I thought it was, I don't know, a show, like it wasn't real." Then another. "Megan said if I didn't support the vote, I was choosing sides, and Mom told me you'd already decided to leave." I felt cornered. I reread those lines 3 times. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the closest thing I'd gotten in years that didn't come laced with an ask. "If you want me to speak out, I will." I didn't reply. Not yet. I wasn't ready to trust her again, but something in me softened just a notch. That night, I sat at my kitchen table alone, with nothing but my breath and the ticking of the thermostat. My hands shook, not from fear, from release. From the relief of having finally spoken, of finally being heard. I whispered it to the quiet, just to hear it out loud. Maybe I was never the quiet one. Maybe they just never listened. The next morning, I woke to silence. But it felt different. Emptier, not heavier. I moved on instinct, boxing up the pieces of a life I no longer owed anyone. There wasn't a plan, just momentum. Like once the words had left my mouth, everything else had to follow. The last box landed with a dull thud near the coat closet. I didn't bother labeling anything anymore, just shuffled the essentials into drawers, closed the cabinets, and breathed in the blankness of the new apartment. No family portraits, no heirlooms, no framed cross-stitches saying home is where the heart is. Just walls, clean, silent. I'd signed the lease 3 days after the blow-up and finalized every severance I could think of. New emergency contacts, no shared financial ties, legal notices filed and documented. I changed passwords, moved accounts, even scrubbed Dad's name off the trust backups they thought I wouldn't catch. I'd missed nothing this time. On the kitchen counter, folded neatly, was an old red sweater, one Mom had given me during a particularly awkward Christmas years ago. It had gold-threaded snowflakes and a little stitched tag inside that read, "Love you always." That same year, she'd called me selfish for not co-signing a loan for Jackson. I donated it to a shelter on my way to the grocery store. My phone buzzed. I opened the family thread one last time and typed, "My number stays the same, but you'll never reach who I used to be." Then I blocked them all, every last one. I didn't expect silence to feel like safety, but it did. For 3 days, nothing came. Then the messages started again, but this time from new numbers. The first was a photo. Their living room, the usual tree, same placement, but there was a gaping hole where presents used to be stacked. "It doesn't feel the same without you. Ilara cried all night," Leora wrote. 10 minutes later, another one. "We're behind on the mortgage. You don't care anymore, do you?" Rowan. Then Jackson of all people. "We all said things we regret, but you went nuclear. Why would you do this to your own family?" None of them said sorry. None of them asked how I was doing. They just pointed fingers draped in concern, as if their discomfort was my crime. I stood at my new kitchen window, the city lights dimming behind mountain fog, and let the texts pile up like junk mail I'd never open. Then I poured a glass of wine, no holiday glassware this time, just a clean tumbler, and stepped out onto the balcony. The cold didn't bother me tonight. No music played, no messages popped in, and for once, no voice inside me asked if I'd gone too far. They didn't want me healed. They wanted me manageable. And I finally understood the difference. A few nights later, the cold started to feel familiar. Almost welcome. I sat on the balcony longer than usual, watching the lights from the neighboring building flicker on and off. Somewhere, a dog barked twice, and then nothing. I like that kind of quiet, the kind where no one needed anything from me. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sienna Moore. We hadn't spoken in over 10 years. College friends turned Facebook background noise. "Hey, sorry to ask, but are you okay? I heard you were going through something. Megan messaged me, said you might be in a dark place. Wanted to make sure you're safe." I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and locked. So this was her new game. I opened Messenger, another one, and another. People I hadn't talked to in ages, some from high school, others from a job I'd left long ago, all with eerily similar messages. She said you've been isolating, that you might be overwhelmed. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. It's okay to not be okay. Each one came with a sickly sweet tone, wrapped in concern but dipped in judgment. This wasn't worry. This was a campaign. A few hours later, the smoke turned to fire. A vague post went up on Facebook, written by a woman named Harper, someone I'd worked with years ago on a non-profit project, now a casual acquaintance at best. "We need to talk more about mental health, especially when people lash out, cut off their families, and claim victimhood while causing chaos." It didn't name me, it didn't have to. 3 comments down, a mutual friend tagged my name. Then someone else dropped a screenshot, an out-of-context text I'd sent Leora months ago. "I'm not sure I can keep doing this with them. It's exhausting." That one word, exhausting, was all they needed to spin a new story. That I was unstable, emotionally fragile, dangerous. The whispers came next. In direct messages, in sub-posts, in the language of polite cruelty. "She used to be so sweet. Now she's cold. It's the holidays. Who cuts off their family at Christmas? Maybe she needs help." Then a comment from Aunt Meryl, who hadn't spoken to me since I was a teenager. "We should all just pray for her." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I opened my laptop instead and started drafting a public response, something sharp, articulate, laced with proof. But halfway through, I stopped typing. What was the point? They weren't looking for answers. They were just looking for control. So I called my lawyer. By the end of the day, Megan received a formal cease and desist notice. Attached were screenshots, message logs, and a warning that any further defamation would be met with legal consequences. No more phone calls, no more folder drops. This time I spoke in their language. That night, as the final email was sent, I whispered to myself, "You're not winning. You're gasping." And the silence that followed told me she heard. The silence didn't last long. 2 days after I sent the cease and desist, there was a knock at my door. 3 sharp raps, followed by nothing. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked the peephole, heart tightening. It was Corinne. She stood there with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, and a tote that looked like it had been hastily packed. Her face was blotchy, eyes swollen, mascara smudged, no smile, just exhaustion. "I'm sorry for showing up like this," she said as I opened the door. I stepped aside without asking. She walked in slowly, like her limbs were heavy. I didn't speak, not yet. I just waited. She stood in the middle of my living room for a moment, then finally whispered, "I can't stay with them anymore. It's poisoned. All of it." I nodded once, then locked the door behind her. We sat down side by side on the couch like old friends who forgot how to start over. It was a long time before she spoke again. "I should have said something sooner," Corinne murmured. "But after I messaged you, Megan found out." I looked at her, my chest tightening. "She cornered me in the kitchen," she continued, her voice shaking. "Said if I ever contacted you again, she'd cut me off completely. Told me I was choosing a traitor." Then Mom chimed in, said loyalty meant silence. Corinne paused, eyes glassy. I don't think I ever realized how deep it went. The control, the fear. "Yeah," I said softly. "It's easy not to see it until you're the target." She looked at me, then really looked. "Damon left. He's staying at a friend's place. He told me Megan tried to push him to write a statement about your mental instability. He refused." My throat burned. Corinne reached into her bag and handed me a folded piece of paper, a printed email, a full thread of messages from Leora, from Megan, each one nastier than the last. Gaslighting. Threats. Manipulation. "You were right," she said. "About everything, and I'm done pretending too." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear those words until they left her lips. Later that night, another message came in from Megan. You turned her against us just like you poisoned everything. I didn't hesitate. You did that all by yourself. Then I blocked her. Phone, email, every platform. I opened a document I'd been sitting on for weeks, a formal affidavit in support of Damon's divorce filing. I signed it, scanned it, sent it to his lawyer. Done. Corinne and I sat on the balcony that evening, the sky bruised with January cold. I brought her a blanket. She didn't thank me with words, just tucked it around herself and leaned back in the chair beside mine. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. Because for the first time, the silence between us didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like peace. You're safe here, I said after a while. For real this time. She nodded, exhaling slow. And I realized quietly that maybe I was safe too. 2 weeks later, I found the letter in my mailbox, tucked between a utilities bill and a coupon booklet. No return address, just my name handwritten in a familiar tilted script that stopped me cold. I stood there on the steps outside my building, fingers tightening around the envelope. My first instinct was to toss it. The trash can was only 6 steps away, but something in me said, read it. Not for them. For me. I walked upstairs, placed it on the counter, stared at it for an hour while the tea water cooled. Then I sat, opened the flap carefully, and unfolded the first page. We miss you every day. No apology, no admission, just that line, scripted in my mother's loopy cursive. Page 2. Your father hasn't been well, his breathing's gotten worse. And Alara, she keeps asking when you're coming back. She drew you a picture, a pang. Not a sharp one. Just the kind that brushes against old bruises. Then the third page. We might lose the house. The mortgage is too far behind. We just need a little help. After that, we'll never ask again. Please, Marin. That line, we'll never ask again, was underlined twice. I read all 3 pages once more. Then I folded them up, stood, and carried the letter outside. On the balcony, I pulled out the ceramic bowl I used to keep succulents in, set the letter inside, lit a match. The paper curled fast, black edges folding in on themselves, ink bleeding into orange flame. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even feel sad. I watched the smoke rise, soft and thin, vanishing into the sky and whispered, I'm not angry anymore, I'm just done. There was something final in that moment, not like slamming a door, more like taking the key off your ring and tossing it into a river. Later that night, I found an old emergency contact form I'd left half-filled in a drawer. I pulled it out, crossed off every old name, wrote in my own. Me. Finally, me. A few days after that, Corinne asked me if I could walk Alara to school. She had a shift and didn't want to leave her daughter with a sitter. I agreed without thinking. It wasn't an obligation. It was a choice. Alara held my hand the whole walk, skipping every third step. When we got to the gate, she looked up at me with that soft, curious stare only kids can manage. Will I see you at my birthday? She asked. I smiled, crouching down so we were eye level. Only if I'm invited. She nodded, then ran toward her class. I stood there for a minute, just watching her disappear into a crowd of color and chatter. When I turned to head home, the clouds were finally breaking, sunlight threading through the gray, slow and golden. And for once, the end didn't feel like a collapse. It felt like a clearing. Maybe you've been the one keeping it all together. Maybe you've stayed silent to keep the peace, until you realized the silence was costing you your peace. For years I thought love meant sacrifice, that being the strong one meant absorbing every blow, cleaning up every mess, carrying the weight without ever asking for help. But here's what I learned. Being strong isn't about how much you can endure. It's about knowing when enough is enough. It's about choosing yourself without apology. Sometimes family won't understand your boundaries because they were the ones who benefited from you not having any. And when you finally draw that line, they'll call it betrayal. But it's not. It's healing. I don't share this story to be dramatic. I share it for anyone who's ever felt guilty for walking away, for saying no, for protecting their peace. You are not selfish for outgrowing dysfunction. You are not heartless for demanding respect. And you are not alone. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between peace and people? Between protecting your boundaries and preserving a relationship? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Just type 1 if this story hit home, or let me know what city or state you're watching from. I read every comment, seriously. And if this video gave you something to think about, maybe strength, maybe a little clarity, Then don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Because trust me, you're not the only one rebuilding. And you deserve to write your next chapter. You're moving to the basement. They took my room for my pregnant sister, even though I'd paid $24,000 in mortgage. No more, I said. For years I've paid my mortgage and all of my utility bills. 3 days later, they found out what happens when the money stops pouring. My computer's buzz was the only sound that remained coherent. It was a clear, steady thrum, the sound of logic and order, of ones and zeros forming worlds on a beautiful screen. I turned my childhood bedroom into a remote workplace where I could create and solve problems. At the age of 22, I was a senior software developer, the kind of success story my parents liked to share with their friends. But outside this door, the code had become garbled. The logic has broken down. Outside this door, I was just Daniel, the dependable younger son, the human ATM, the silent pillar holding up a house that was silently falling. The door creaked open, and the smells of pot roast and stress filled the room. My mother, Sharon, was holding a plate with a slice of apple pie. Her grin was warm and rehearsed, the kind she used when she wanted to request anything. "You work so hard, sweetie," she said, setting the dish at the corner of my desk, dangerously close to a stack of technical books. "I don't know how you stare at that screen all day." "It's how the sausage is made, Mom," I said with a tired smile. "I've been debugging a critical flaw for the last 6 hours, and my brain felt like scrambled eggs." She stroked my hair back, a touch from my childhood that now felt like a forerunner. "We're so proud of you, you know that, right?" "I know, Mom." Her touch remained on my shoulder. "Listen, honey. I know it's a bad time, but I was just going over the grocery receipts and things are just so much more expensive this month. I'm short about $200 for the big shop this weekend." I did not look at her. I simply kept my eyes fixed on the screen and my fingers hovering over the keyboard. When I spotted the bags, I realized she had just finished a big shop 3 days ago. I also knew my father, Mark, had been talking about getting a new set of golf equipment. I didn't mention any of that. I merely nodded, took my phone off its stand, and opened my banking app. "No problem," I said softly, my thumb tapping the screen. "I'll send it over." "Oh, you're a lifesaver," she groaned, relieved instantly and completely. She leaned down and kissed my temple. "It's just what family does. We support each other." She picked up the empty coffee mug from my desk. "I'll get you a fresh cup." As she left, her signature phrase hung in the air. "It's just what family does." It served as the explanation for everything. It was the reason why half of the mortgage payment for this house, for which I was not even named on the deed, was set to be withdrawn automatically from my account each month. It explained why the energy, high-speed internet, and water bills were all in my name and paid in full. It was the reason I spent a huge chunk of my money last winter to fix a leaky roof after a storm, while my father complained about how contractors were thieves, and I quietly signed the bill. It was the reason I co-signed for my mother's car, and when the payments were tight, I simply took over completely. My chair's springs moaned as I leaned back. I justified everything with a simple, dangerous thought: it keeps the peace. My father was a proud man who couldn't take the thought of being labeled as failure. My mother was fragile and always concerned about her beauty. My efforts helped them maintain the image of a comfortable, secure middle-class living. It was my hidden present to them, which they never noticed, and I never mentioned. The front door slammed shut, following by the heavy stomp of boots across the hardwood floor. A second later, my door was pushed open without a knock. Rachel, my older sister, was 25 years old and exuded the unwarranted confidence of someone who had never faced a serious consequence. Her husband, Robert, trailed behind her, a lanky guy with troubled eyes that seemed to decrease with each passing day. Rachel leaned against the doorframe, a smirk on her face. "Still saving the world with computer magic?" "Just paying the bills, Rachel," I responded in a softer tone than I intended. "Tough day," she said, running her fingers through her beautifully manicured hair. "Robert had a great interview with that logistics company. Nailed it. But the manager was a total jerk. Had it out for him from the start." Robert stood awkwardly behind her, blushing from shame. It was the same story as last month, only with a different corporate name. Rachel was a master at converting Robert's near misses into almost successes, continuously portraying him as a victim of a world that overlooked his abilities. Rachel and Robert had been staying with us for the past 6 months after losing their apartment after Robert was laid off from his previous job. What had started as a temporary arrangement had become permanent. with my parents treating them like honored guests rather than adults who needed to get back on their feet. She looked me up and down. "Hey little brother. Let me borrow $50. Robert and I are going out tonight to celebrate our news." Rachel and Robert had been married for 8 months when she announced her pregnancy. "Celebrate?" I asked, raising my eyebrows. "Or panic?" She scowled. "Hey, be cool, it's a good thing." She entered the room, her voice lowering. "Look, I'll pay you back when Robert gets on his feet." That was the oldest line in her book, a promise so worn and faded that it was obvious. Rachel had always been good at making other people's problems appear like opportunities for me to help. But I saw a glimmer of desperation in her eyes, anxiety behind her bravado. She was my sister, so I did as I had always done. I took 2 20s and a 10 from my battered leather wallet in my back pocket and gave them to him. Avoiding the fight was worth $50. Later that night, I was having a video discussion with Liam, my best buddy since kindergarten. He was the only one who was fully aware of my financial deal with my family. His face, pixelated on my display, was one of surprise. "They're making you pay for the celebration of the baby that's going to make their financial situation even worse? Daniel, are you hearing yourself? You're not a son, you're a subsidiary. You're the R&D department and the entire revenue stream for a failing family business." "It's not like that," I responded, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I'm helping them out. They're in a tough spot." "They've been in a tough spot since you got your signing bonus," Liam said, his voice rising. "They see your paycheck as a family resource. Your dad gets new clubs, your mom gets her car, Rachel gets date night money, and you get to live in the same room you had when you were 15. It's a raw deal, man. When are you going to wake up and see it?" I didn't have a response for him. I only looked at my own reflection in the dark screen, a pale, weary face staring back at me. A week later, I got the wake-up call. My parents and Rachel were excited about the wedding plans and the baby. The whole house vibrated with frantic intensity. During supper, my father cleared his throat, a sound that always indicated an impending proclamation. He smiled at Rachel, then at me. "You know, with the baby coming, and Rachel and Robert starting their new life together, we're all going to have to make some adjustments. Big changes are coming." He smashed his large, proprietary hand against my shoulder. "It's an exciting time, a time for family to really stick together." The word adjustment struck the pit of my stomach like a stone. I looked around the table at the ecstatic faces, my father's proud bluster, my mother's teary-eyed excitement, my sister's smug contentment, Robert's anxious fidgeting, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a part of the family. I felt like a resource ready to be used. The family talk took place 2 days later. They sat me in the living room, on the flowery sofa that had absorbed decades of unspoken anguish. My father took his usual armchair, the throne from which he issued his decrees. My mother sat on the edge of the ottoman, wringing her hands. It seemed more like a sentence than a conversation. Rachel sat beside my mother, one hand protectively resting on her little bump, while Robert hesitated awkwardly near the window. "Daniel," my father began solemnly, "your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking. About the future, about this family." He waved expansively, as if to cover the very concept of kinship. "Rachel and Robert need a proper start. A real bedroom to build their nest, to welcome our grandchild." I stayed silent, my heart racing slightly faster. I knew where this was going. "So," he replied with a sarcastic grin, "we have a wonderful solution. It's a way for you to make a real, meaningful contribution. We're going to move you down to the basement room. It's spacious, and it will give the newlyweds the privacy and space they need in your old room." He spoke with finality, as if he were announcing that I had gotten an honor. He was not inquiring, he was informing me of an already reached conclusion. "The basement," I finally whispered, the words strange to my throat. "Dad, it's not finished. It's a concrete box." "Don't be dramatic," he murmured, waving his hand dismissively. "We'll throw a rug down, get you a nice lamp, it'll be cozy. A real bachelor pad." My mother joined in, her voice soft and enticing. "Think of it as your contribution to your new niece or nephew, sweetie. A sacrifice, yes. But a beautiful one. For my family." A sacrifice. They were asking me to move my entire existence, my workplace, sanctuary, and the only place in this house that was truly mine, to a soggy basement storage area. They described it as a noble sacrifice. Later, I walked down to check for myself. I removed the old metal chain, revealing a single naked 60-watt bulb that projected lengthy, warped shadows over the room. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and cold ground. A large, spidery watermark appeared on the distant wall, resembling a ghostly map of last winter's flood. I could see the faint form of my father's old gym bench and my childhood bicycle, which had rusted. I ran my hand along the harsh concrete wall. It felt chilly and somewhat damp to the touch. A dead cricket lay coiled on the floor beside the ancient, roaring furnace. It was not a bachelor pad. It was a tomb. They wanted to include me in it. The next day, I tried to reason with them again. I approached them in the kitchen when my mother was making coffee. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice respectful and logical. "I understand you want to help Rachel. I want to help her too. But I can't work in the basement. My job requires a stable, secure, dry environment for thousands of dollars of computer equipment. I have multiple monitors, servers. I need the dedicated electrical circuits and the hardwired Ethernet connection in my room. The Wi-Fi doesn't even reach the basement." My father was reading the sports page at the table and did not glance up. "You'll figure it out. You're the smart one." "This isn't about being smart, Dad. It's about logistics. My job, the job that pays for the high-speed internet you want me to move away from, depends on the setup." "Oh, Daniel. Don't make this so difficult," my mother grumbled, stepping away from the counter. Her look was one of weariness and despair. "You're making this all about you. Just think of the baby. Your sister needs this. Your sister needs this." The 4 words that have shaped my entire life. Rachel needed a new bike, so mine was passed down. Rachel needed tuition, therefore my allowance was decreased to cover it. Rachel needed something, and Daniel provided it. But this time, she only needed my dignity. That evening, I overheard Rachel and Robert talking in the hallway. I was walking to the kitchen to get a glass of water when I overheard their hushed talk. "I don't know, Rachel," Robert replied, his tone oddly uneasy. "It feels kind of wrong. This is his room, you know. He works there." "Babe, be realistic," Rachel said, her voice crisp and sensible. "We need the space. We're having a baby. What are we supposed to do, live in the basement? He's a single guy. He can manage. He's smart. He'll figure it out. Don't be soft about this. We need to think about our family now." He remained silent for a minute. Yeah, you're right." Hearing it from her, so open and honest, reaffirmed something in me. They didn't consider me a family member. I was an impediment. A resource to be utilized. And my sister, who should have been my ally, treated me as an irritation, while my brother-in-law, despite his reservations, was too weak to protect me when it mattered. The following day my phone vibrated. It was my Aunt Carol, my father's younger sister. She was the family's black sheep, having moved out of state and emphasizing honesty over appearances. "I heard the news," she said, her tone bland. "Your father called to tell me about Rachel's baby and the wonderful new living arrangements." I exhaled. "Yeah. Daniel," she said softly. "I'm just going to say this once. You have always been a good boy, a good son, a good brother. But sometimes being too good lets people forget your worth. They start to see your kindness not as a gift, but as an expectation. Don't let them erase you." Her words struck like a depth charge, creating waves across 3 years of conditioned compliance. Don't let them erase you. They were seeking to erase my demands, space, and contributions until only my function remained. That evening I received an email invitation to the annual Miller family reunion and BBQ. My father cornered me at the stairs. "Hey champ," he exclaimed, thumping my back somewhat too hard. "At the reunion, I'm going to share the happy news with everyone, about you helping out your sister. It'll be great. Show the whole family how we stick together." That was it, the point of no return. He meant to use my humiliation as a public demonstration of his own magnanimity. He intended to use me as a prop in his play about the caring parent. A cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. It wasn't hot or angry, just chillingly clear. I entered my room and closed the door. I wouldn't argue with him again in private. I would not plead my case. If he decided to make it public, then so would my reaction. I sat down at my workstation, the computer's hum creating a comfortable background. I logged onto my internet banking portal. I used a deliberate approach, month by month, year after year. I took screenshots of each mortgage payment transfer branded Miller Mortgage. I captured screenshots of all utility payments made to the city's power and water departments. I found an email invoice for the $8,000 roof repair. I found the digital records for car payments. I saved each one to a secure folder on my phone, not for spite, but to maintain my sanity. That was proof. Proof that I was not mad. Proof that my contributions were valid. Proof of my right to say no. I was no longer just reacting. I was prepared. He wanted to make a public declaration, which is great. I would have a public response prepared. The reunion day began bright and oppressively joyful. Our backyard, which was once a peaceful area of green, has been transformed into the ideal place for family activity. The air was thick with the smells of charcoal and freshly cut grass. Uncles I saw once a year laughed too loudly while grilling hamburgers, their beer bottles sweating in the afternoon heat. Aunts cooed over Rachel's early pregnancy and offered unsolicited advice on prenatal supplements and baby names. Children, sticky with watermelon juice, yelled and chased one another across the lawn. It was an excellent depiction of American family bliss, and I felt like a ghost in the frame. I walked through the crowd, a cold can of Coke in my hand, offering forced smiles and non-committal remarks. I felt my father's gaze from across the yard. He was in his element, holding court in front of the enormous new grill he bought last month, which I assumed was paid for by the money I gave my mother for property taxes. I took a seat near the ancient oak tree and sipped my drink while watching the performance. Rachel performed excellently as the pregnant mother, one hand protectively resting on her scarcely discernible abdomen and accepting congratulations with a warm pride. Robert stood awkwardly behind her, collecting comments for which he appeared unwilling to take credit. My mother glided between groups like a social hummingbird, ensuring that everyone's plate was full and their drink was topped off. My father then banged a knife against his beer bottle. The sound cut through the joyous din. "Hey everyone, can I have your attention for a minute?" Conversations came to an end. Heads turned. This was his moment. He threw his arm around my mother and drew her closer. "As you all know, we have some wonderful news in the Miller family. My daughter Rachel and her husband Robert are going to be parents." A chorus of applauding and whoops reverberated throughout the yard. He let it fade away, his grin widening. And in times like these, a family shows its true strength. It shows how we pull together, how we support ourselves. He scanned the crowd until his sight rested on me. He pointed at me with his bottle. "And I have never been prouder of my son, Daniel. To help his sister and Robert get the best possible start, Daniel has graciously, and with a full heart, offered to give them his bedroom. And he'll be making a new space for himself in the basement." He looked at me like a ruler waiting for a bow from a loyal subject. That's the kind of man he is. That's the kind of family we are. Let's hear it for Daniel. A few people started clapping with appreciation on their cheeks. Rachel was beaming. My mom dabbed her eyes. A strange serenity washed over me. The background noise from the celebration subsided into a muffled roar. It seemed like I was seeing a movie about my own life. I took a slow breath. "Actually, Dad," I replied. My voice was not loud, but it was clear and consistent, and it echoed throughout the suddenly quiet yard. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." The clapping dwindled and then stopped. Every eye was on me now. My father's smile was fixed on his face. "I won't be giving up my room," I murmured, my gaze riveted on his. The silence that ensued was awful. Absolute. The only sound was the sizzle of hamburgers on the grill. My father's face, which had been beaming with delight, gradually darkened, and color rose up his neck. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Rachel approached with an incredulous expression. "Daniel, what is your problem? We talked about this. It's just for a little while." "My problem, Rachel," I began as I moved toward her, "is that my room is also my office. It's where I do the job that pays for—" I never finished the phrase. My father moved faster than I'd seen him do in years. He closed the gap between us in 3 large steps. Before I could react, his arm swung back. The crunch of his open palm against my cheek was harsh and unpleasant, like a branch snapping. The hit jolted my jaw. My head snapped to one side. A collective gasp resonated throughout the audience. For a brief moment, the world was nothing but stinging heat on my face and a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I detected a slight, coppery taste of blood where my teeth had cut into the inside of my cheek. My chest tightened, as if someone had coiled barbed wire over my lungs. I softly turned back to face him. His chest heaved. His eyes were wild, filled with rage that I had never seen directed at me before. My mother let out a harsh shriek. I touched my cheek. It had already begun to swell. I looked at my father. The man who had just hit his son in front of 30 family members because he refused to be made homeless in his own home. "You hit me," I murmured softly, the words barely audible. Then I spoke louder, my voice shaking with a cold, crystalline anger I hadn't realized I possessed. "You hit me. For a room." I took a step back to create some room between us. I looked behind him and saw my mother's terrified expression, Rachel's shocked and instantly guilty expression, Robert, who seemed to want to hide totally, and my aunts and uncles' stunned expressions. "Let's talk about what I've paid for," I said, raising my voice. I pulled out my phone. My hands trembled, but my aim was steady. I held it up. "This family sticks together. This family supports its own. For the last 2 years I have paid half of the mortgage on this house every single month." I swiped the screen. "I pay for the electricity that is currently cooking those burgers. I pay for the high-speed internet everyone uses. When the roof was leaking last winter, it wasn't the insurance company that paid the $8,000 bill. It was me." I looked at my mother. "The car you drove here today? I make the payments on that too." I lowered the phone, my voice relaxing but still ferocious. "This room isn't a gift you can give away. It's the one thing in this entire house I haven't paid for yet. So don't you ever talk to me about sacrifice." The quiet was absolute. My father stood immobile, his face a mottled shade of crimson and white. His rage melted into perplexed astonishment. My mother was openly crying now, with her hand covering her mouth. Rachel looked like she was about to get sick. She wouldn't meet my sight. Robert stood behind her, his face pale with shock, and what appeared to be growing comprehension. Aunt Carol was the first to move. She walked up to my side and rested her hand against my arm. "Come on, Daniel," she said calmly. "Let's go." I nodded, my eyes never leaving my father's. I allowed her to lead me away. I didn't feel triumphant as I walked by my family and the rubble of the wonderful picture they had tried to paint. I felt a huge hollow nothingness. "Daniel, wait," my mother said, her voice cracking. I didn't stop. I went through the side gate, got into my car, and closed the door. The sound of it closing was the most definite I had ever heard. I turned the key, and as I drove away from the curb, I observed my father standing on the lawn, a broken statue amidst his destroyed party. The night was spent in a bland, unremarkable motel room. The air conditioner was really cold, the bedding was really firm. But it was quiet. For the first time in years, I had to prioritize my own needs. I did not respond to the barrage of calls and texts. Instead, I sat on the side of the bed, the light from my laptop illuminating my face, and began tearing down the structure I had built around my family. It wasn't a fit of wrath. It was a matter of consequences, as calm and rational as debugging a line of code. I logged into my bank account. The automatic mortgage transfer to my father's account was canceled. I visited the city utility portal. All of my paid-for services, including electricity, water, and internet, were scheduled for disconnection due to non-payment, effective immediately. I reset the password and disabled autopay on the account for my mother's car payments. Each click was a gentle snip that severed the wire of dependency. When I finished, I blocked all of their numbers and turned off my phone. I needed silence. 3 days later I drove home. Liam accompanied me, and I was deeply grateful for his quiet, steady presence. I only needed to get my computer, office materials, and some clothes. The remaining they could keep. As we approached, the house was strangely silent. Despite the gloomy afternoon, no lights were turned on. It appeared uninhabited. My keys still worked in the lock. We walked into a gloomy, deep silence. The air felt dense and cold. The refrigerator's normal buzz had subsided. We found them in the living room, seated like ghosts in the gray afternoon light. My father sat slumped in his seat, appearing 10 years older. My mother reclined on the sofa, her face puffy and teary. As I arrived, they both looked up, terrified and desperate. "Daniel," my mother replied quietly while standing up. "Thank God, the power is out. The internet is gone. We got a letter, an urgent notice about the mortgage." "I know," I responded kindly. "I stopped paying for them." My father finally stirred. "You did this?" he rasped, his voice softening from its usual booming authority. "You'd let your own family sit in the dark?" "You slapped me in front of them," I said gently. "I think we have different definitions of family." That was when my mother snapped. The facade of jaded disappointment crumbled, exposing raw, stark desperation. "You don't understand," she sobbed, moving closer to me. We needed that money. We had to have it. Needed it for what? I asked, my old bitterness returning. New golf clubs? No, she cried, and the entire truth, a flood of guilt buried for years, was abruptly disclosed. For the other mortgage, the one we took out years ago, for the credit cards. We're drowning, Daniel. We have been for years. Your money was the only thing, keeping our heads above water. I didn't know what else to do. She collapsed back into the sofa, sobbing, racking her entire body. The secret was out. This was not just about entitlement. It was about a dark, rotting core of debt and remorse that they kept hidden from everyone, including me. They hadn't used me just for luxuries. They had been using me for survival and regarded me as a nuisance. Liam placed a hand on my shoulder, indicating that he was ready to begin shifting my belongings. As he approached the stairs, Rachel entered the corridor, followed by Robert. She looked terrible. Her face was pale, her eyes were red-rimmed, and the usual haughty smirk had vanished, replaced with a profound, hollowed-out guilt. Robert appeared far worse, if that is possible. She stopped me before I could follow Liam. She didn't look at my parents. She just looked at me. Daniel, she said, barely speaking. I'm sorry. I waited without saying anything. When Dad slapped you, and you said all that stuff about the bills. She shook her head, looking for words. I never knew. I took it all for granted. I thought Dad had it covered. Robert moved forwards, his voice shaking. I tried to tell her it wasn't right, taking your room. But He looked down at his hands. I was too much of a coward to speak up. I'm about to be a father, and I couldn't even stand up for what's right. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I've been so jealous of you, Daniel. You have this great job. You have your life together. And I'm pregnant, and scared, and Robert can't find work. So I went along with it. It was easier than admitting we were failures. I'm deeply sorry. It was the most honest thing I'd ever heard her say. She wasn't the golden kid at the time, but rather a fearful lady confronting the truth about herself. My parents were now adopting a different technique, urging me to simply turn the electricity back on so we could talk it out, and my father even offered me a compromise in which I could keep my room if I continued making payments. I shook my head, walked over to the coffee table, and placed a business card there. This is a nonprofit credit counselor, I explained. They can help you consolidate your debt and create a realistic budget. That's your first step. I then looked at Rachel and Robert. This is your wake-up call, I said, my voice serious but not harsh. Your child does not need you to succeed. They need you to be responsible adults. Step up. Stop letting them treat you like a child, and stop letting them use me as a bank. This is your family to support right now. I turned and went away, joining Liam upstairs to pack the last of my stuff from that place. The weeks that followed were spent hunting for an apartment and starting over. I found a modest one-bedroom apartment downtown with huge windows and a view of the city, and it was mine, every inch of it. The silence was tremendous. It was the sound of serenity. Aunt Carol became my lifeline, calling every few days to check in, not to gossip, but to advise me that my parents had finally contacted a credit counselor, and that they would have to sell their childhood home and relocate to a small rental across town. The veneer had finally and irreversibly collapsed. About a month after I moved out, I received a text message from an unusual number. I'm Rachel, and I'm working part-time at a clinic. Robert has gotten a job in a warehouse. I'm working part-time at a clinic, and we're looking for a place to live before the baby arrives. Thank you for waking me up. I stared at the message for a long time. I responded with something simple. You are welcome. Good luck. It wasn't forgiveness, yet. But it was a start. A new foundation was built on the debris of the old one. Sometimes I stand by my new window, staring out at the city lights, and think about them. I no longer feel angry, or even triumphant. I generally feel a quiet sorrow for the family I thought I had, and a deep abiding gratitude for the peace I battled for. I didn't destroy my family. I simply stopped setting myself on fire to keep them warm. They needed to learn how to find their own light. It's amazing how quickly you can recognize your own worth once you stop paying others to overlook it. Have you ever had to decide between family and self-respect? What would you have done? My fiancée took me to therapy 2 weeks before our wedding, then tried to ambush me into an open marriage. Now she's begging for a second chance. We were about to marry 2 weeks ago. She invited me to go to therapy with her. She was already seeing a therapist on her own and wanted me to accompany her and have a conversation before the wedding where we could be entirely honest with each other. That sounded odd to me. I assumed we were already entirely honest with one another. After all, we were getting married in 2 weeks, right? She was also quite protective of her therapy sessions and did not discuss them openly. I'd never met her therapist, so being welcomed there felt out of place. The day arrived, and I went there, but out of self-preservation, I kept my phone open and captured any sounds. My fiancé was already present. I had to wait 20 minutes before being permitted in. The therapist welcomes me and shakes my hand. We had a small chat. She tells me I am not at all like my fiancé described me. I assume she's attempting to compliment me. Then she turns at my fiancé and says, "This may be harder than we thought." That completely freaked me out. But I am a calm and composed person, and I do not react. Instead, I maintain the dumb smile that we all have in awkward situations. So the therapist starts talking and gives a brief speech that I don't want to repeat. My fiancé holds my hand as the therapist begins to tell me that we live in a modern society and that she wants us to have a non-traditional marriage going forward. I smile. I'm not sure what that means. In my view, I believe she wants to discuss how she will not be a slave to her husband, how she will not surrender her job life, and so on. Modern womanhood, girl power, and all that. Nope. She is actually discussing how, once we are married, she wants to be free to sleep with other guys, which is another non-traditional sort of marriage. I forgot, it is 2018. But she adores me, and would be uncomfortable with me having the same privileges, because she would be upset if I found other women appealing, and one of them stole me away from her. So I let them finish speaking. They were very articulate, and their confidence in speaking grew as a result of my silence. And while I wasn't saying anything, this was clearly something they had practiced. I then questioned the therapist if she was licensed. Her reaction indicated that she did not anticipate this to be the first thing out of my mouth. She answered yes, so I ordered her to explain to my fiancé why we are no longer getting married, and would not continue to be a pair, beginning immediately. I wished them luck and exited the office. Now I'd like to report to the therapist. I'm not sure if I need to report her to the clinic, or if there is a body that oversees therapists. I don't think their plot to corner me is professional, and I want her to bear the consequences. That session didn't set right with me. To be clear, there would have been no positive consequence from the conversation my fiancé and the therapist had with me. Even if she had wanted an open marriage in which I could sleep with other women, the end would have been the same. That's not a marriage. That's a shame. It also occurred to me that she might have cheated on me. Certain things don't seem to make sense now that I have this mental clarity. So I was an idiot nonetheless. I listened to the recording and still can't believe what was stated. Anyway, I called the wedding off. I am a very easygoing man. There are no fights with me since I don't want them. There are no disagreements or opponents since my life is based on principles and common sense. That could have given my ex the notion that I would be simple to walk over like a doormat. But she's an idiot for thinking that. After listening to the recording a few times, I am confident the therapist recognized that I am not how my fiancé must have described me in their sessions, hence this may be harder than we thought. Now that the wedding is over, people are beginning to ask questions I am uncomfortable answering. How do I approach this? See, I'm sure my ex is performing damage control, but I have the recording, and if she deviates too far from the topic, I won't be afraid to tell people what she wants us to talk about. But my parents and family want answers, and I'm not sure what to tell them. I don't want them to think I'm an idiot for letting my ex get to the point where she was so confident that she outright told me she wanted to sleep with other guys. She is also blowing up my phone, my best friend's phone, and my brother's phone. We can work on this. I didn't understand what they were telling me in the therapy session. She will do anything to fix this. It was the therapist's idea. She was against it, and so on. The final shriek of a dying siren. All of her cries go unheard, and I own those ears. We were also working on obtaining a loan to purchase a home, but I canceled everything. I effectively severed any ties we had, monetarily or otherwise. Her present appeal is that during treatment, she revealed her worries regarding our sexual history. I had far more partners than she did, and the therapist suggested that we level the field. Regardless of the veracity of this, I will report that therapist once I figure out where to go and what to say. This post is largely a rant, but I'd like to know how you would handle questions from friends and family. My ex is definitely conducting her own damage control, and I don't want to be in a he said she said situation. I have the recording and was wondering if I should share it with the relevant parties. My ex does not know I have the recording. A little update, I am at work, and I just received confirmation that the diary has been returned to my ex. I sent it early in the morning by the courier that our office employs, and she had to sign a confirmation order stating that she received it. As several have suggested, I concluded that reading it would be ineffective because she never accepted responsibility for the incident. Thank you. Update 1. Putting aside the jokes, it's been an intriguing 2 weeks since my initial post. Last Monday, I spoke with a lawyer at work about the problem with the therapist. He looked at me as if I was deceiving him and inquired if it was a hoax. So I asked if he'd like to hear the recording. "Damn right," was his response. I spoke with him again the next day. At the end, he pointed out a few things on the recording that I missed. The therapist was always stating, "We think," "we want," "we talked about," and "we decided." She never said, "Your ex here asked me to talk with you. Your ex wants you to know," or anything similar. It was constantly, "we," "this," and "that." He also inquired what my ultimate goal is. Do I want to sue? He didn't think I had a case, and I agreed. I never planned to sue, but rather to alert the right organizations and let them deal with the therapist. It was decided to write 2 letters, one to the clinic where the therapist works, and one to the American Psychological Association. We ensured she was accredited. By Wednesday, several more employees were aware of the situation, including one of the 2 case researchers. She researched the therapist, found internet ratings, and got in touch with 2 of her prior patients. The therapist did not have the best reviews. Persons were furious with her, and we were able to hunt down the 2 persons we spoke with via social media. They were more than willing to assist once we explained the circumstances, and their stories were no better than mine. The letters expanded in size as we included the signed stories of the other 2 people, as well as my personal explanation of how my ex transformed after starting treatment sessions, and a thorough account of my meeting with the therapist. Last Friday, I met with her parents. Her parents visited my parents' place and we talked. My ex was also present, and additional information was revealed, which was included in the report on the therapist. This week we distributed the reports. The clinic reacted. They called our office on Thursday morning, most likely to see if it was a prank or a serious problem. We spoke with their lawyer or one of their lawyers over the phone, and when we confirmed it was authentic, someone else was heard in the background on their end saying, "Well, crap." They stated they take this very seriously. One of the guys at work concluded that they had certainly had other complaints before, but this was the first time it had been so thoroughly documented. Their letter also stated that we are reporting this to APA, which may have turned on the heat as well, explaining their speedy response. I'm not sure what will happen, but I consider my problem resolved. However, after speaking with the other 2 people who were treated by this therapist, I strongly hope she is examined, because she sounds nuts and has an agenda. She wrecked their relationships as well. To clarify, one of the individuals was a woman. Then there's my ex and her parents. Friday last week, my parents contacted me and asked me to pay them a visit after work. When I surprised my ex, her parents were also present. My initial response upon seeing their cars in my parents' driveway was to leave. This meeting was meant to be on my terms, but she tried to take control of it. That was not going to happen, let me assure you. My ex waited for me outside. She looked pretty good. If there was ever a girl you wanted your parents to meet, she was the embodiment of it. She informed me that they are coming to speak with me and see if we can resolve this. They aren't her parents. She either never told them what occurred or offered them a version of a story they didn't believe. She carried a diary with her. She told me she began writing in it before starting treatment and continued until Friday morning. That I should read it, and it will clear up all of this confusion. I informed her it wasn't a book club. I wanted to walk inside and start the circus, but she asked if I had 10 minutes. She wanted to talk to me for 10 minutes before I met with her parents, and she kept bringing me her journal and crying. Then my sister showed up. Then my ex's sister showed up. They were already present and came out to check on us. So I took her notebook, walked inside, said hello, and left my ex in the back of the garden to claim as much of my parents' garden as possible. They have a spacious garden with plenty of trees and benches. She resigned from her work. The stress was too much for her, and she broke down. It increased and never improved. She is no longer seeing her therapist. She began visiting the therapist for work-related issues, but it quickly changed into issues concerning our relationship, and it remained focused on the relationship because that was all the therapist was interested in. She never told her folks why she was my ex. She is currently seeing another therapist. I just listened. She shifted the conversation from her to us. I was told I would be in control. I will handle the finances. I will gain access to all of her devices. I'll be able to track where she goes. Any property we possess will be in my name. She will do everything I desire to trust her again, based on what she has said in her communications over the last few weeks. She listed more than the items I mentioned. I'm not sure how she believes it would be a healthy lifestyle for either of us. I asked if she had cheated. She told me that she had the opportunity to cheat, but she never did. I believed her, but it made me angry. What does she mean when she says she had the opportunity? If you are in a committed relationship, you would not put yourself in a position to have this opportunity. You do not desire this opportunity. It's like saying, I had the opportunity to kill someone today. But why? What were you doing when you had such an opportunity? Why call it an opportunity? It sounds like something positive. That pretty much ended our 10-minute conversation, and I told her we should go talk to our parents, so, we did. I requested our sisters to leave us alone since what we were about to discuss was not their concern. My sister huffed and puffed, but a stone house can withstand hurricanes, and she was not one. So I told about what happened, how the therapy session went, and my determination. I never said that I had a recording since I didn't have to. My ex corroborated everything I had said, which astonished me. Her father had teary eyes, which shattered my heart. Her mother asked her if this is how she believes they raised her and requested an explanation. My ex practically told them the same story. Work-related stress, despair, breakdown, treatment, and the therapist's desire to discuss just our relationship. The therapist informed her that our connection was the source of all her stress. That the therapist persuaded her I desired an open relationship. That she may lose me if she does not share her sexual experience with me. How my reaction jolted her out of her lethargy. She resigned her work and is seeking something less stressful. She will try anything to get me back. Started weeping. My ex referenced the diary again, saying that if I read it, it would explain everything, and that while she disagreed with the therapist's opinions, she went along with them since the therapist was a person of authority and expertise. Our parents frowned at me, and I told them that I don't read someone's private journal unless they're a dead poet. A big mistake. My objective was to convey that if someone is a writer or a leader, their private notebooks typically become literature and are published after their death. Also, I was hoping they'd get the idea that I don't want to read her journal because it would be pointless. What was done was finished. Everyone stared at me as if I wished death on my ex. You could smell the hatred in the air. So I said fine, and vowed to read her journal. You win some, lose some, and then use the incorrect phrases, resulting in even more losses. My ex is seeing a new therapist. She showed her parents the confirmation emails for her appointments. He's an older man with a white beard, like Freud. I looked for him online. He is married, attends conferences and has written several books. They're on Amazon. Seems like a solid character. Can you kids figure this out? This was the second thing that made me angry that day. As if this is child's play and we should simply listen to the adults. We are not old enough to govern our own emotions, and we should certainly not define what constitutes a betrayal that cannot be recovered from. We are just kids, and we should just work it out. So I won't back down from the Dead Poets Society remark earlier. And that's how the day ended. We've known each other for 9 years and been a couple for 5. Even if there are real causes for her behavior, how can you return to normalcy? This was not even a reset. My perspective on my ex has profoundly shifted. She became a stranger. Yes, I know a lot about her. I still find her attractive. There's no disputing how great she looked last Friday. But it was also calculated, and I'm not going to lie to myself here. Hair done the way I like it. Clothing I got for her, shoes I prefer, a trace of the perfume I gave her, etc. The journal is on my nightstand. I have not read it, and I doubt I ever will. I looked through it to see if it was actually a year old, and it is. The ink is clearly older on the initial pages, as evidenced by the way the page is folded, and it progresses through the pages. The pen she used was attached to the journal, which I tested. The ink appears to be the same, and the ink level in the pen corresponds to how much I believe the pen has been used to write the journal during the last year. This is not a hoax. Everything about it reflects a year of wear and tear. I don't see how this will make for good reading. Me? A mental game-playing instrument. Well, not really. I don't think a year ago when she started writing it, she intended to use it as manipulation. If what she told me is correct, her new therapist requested she share the journal with me. As for how I deal with folks who are overly curious about why the wedding is canceled, we had a significant disagreement that we couldn't resolve. More or less. However, if her sister discovers why, which is highly possible given her sister's strong relationship with their mother. Everyone will learn the true reason. Our parents want us to meet again next week. They urged me to read the journal, and maybe that helps. Maybe we can work on it and start again fresh since we have so much history. She will receive treatment. She'll get better. She is still the woman I fell in love with, but she is not doing well right now. They can see I still adore her. Else, I would not be so theatrical with their words, not mine. I don't suppose I'll be meeting them next Friday. But damn, she looked amazing. I'd like to thank the community for their support and assistance. It was enough to help me design a plan of action for the therapist. Thank you to everyone who shared resources and information on what to do. What do I do with her journal? Return it? Keep it and read it 90 years from now. Update 2. Let us begin. The therapist no longer works at the clinic. The major rationale behind the move most probably has to do with the clinic being sued. Someone else, absolutely unrelated to my circumstance, is suing the clinic. I don't have any extra information on the subject. The therapist attempted to reach Mel but was unable. I assume she learned about my report on her and wanted further information, but who knows? Mel did not interact with her. She was blocked, and her questions remained unanswered. There's a voice in the back of my head whispering that putting together that report might not have been the best idea. I believe it increases the possibility that the persons behind the suit will contact me for assistance and shower me with unwelcome attention. Despite this, I can't keep a satisfied grin off my face, knowing the therapist is in trouble. To those who have expressed skepticism, I have emotions. If this is not proof enough, I don't know what will please you. I pray to God that you comprehend sarcasm. However, Muriel complicates matters significantly. I added a brief update to my previous post concerning her journal. I decided to return it, and I was quite clinical in my approach. On Monday morning, the courier we use at work handed the journal to her. I did include a letter explaining why I had not read it. Everything came down to her refusal to accept responsibility for the situation. I felt that by giving me the book, she wiped her hands of the situation, leaving the weight of finding solutions on my shoulders. In exchange, I cleaned my hands of the situation. To be honest, I felt a pang of sadness the moment they told me the journal had been returned. Perhaps I should have read it. Sophie arrived at my business later in the day. She did not cause a scene like that. She merely waited in the lobby patiently. Her goal was to wait for me to finish my day and then talk to me. Naturally, I discovered she was present pretty quickly. My options were to send her away or talk to her. So we spoke. Several architects designed the demise of our partnership. Number 1. Stress. I was aware of this, but never realized how serious it was. In retrospect, when she began looking for a therapist to help with her work stress, I should have been more aware of the situation. But she always said everything was all right, so why wouldn't I believe her? Whether she was seeing a therapist or not, she had a breakdown at work that she kept hidden from me and her family. Number 2. I could have been a father. She miscarried. She found out she was pregnant a few weeks ago and wanted to make it extra special when she told me. However, a few days later, she began bleeding, and that was it. She never told me about it because she was worried I would think she was unworthy. She understands how badly I want to be a father, and she reasoned that this would give me the impression she is unable to bear children. This is a completely terrible notion. Number 3. Buddies. I made it clear in the comments that we had friends in open relationships, and she has one such pal. She called Sophie about a year ago and invited her to lunch. She quickly began venting her feelings over her failing marriage upon Sophie. Her husband and I have this in common. We have had considerably more partners than significant others. In my instance, there were 26 past partners. In the case of this friend's husband, the figure was a staggering 70. Well, as soon as they married, he demanded an open relationship from his wife, and she has been unhappy ever since. Sophie, it appeared, would face the same fate if she did not take precautions to protect me. This acquaintance told me I was exhibiting the same symptoms as her spouse before they married. Number 4. The people we love are not who we think they are. Our fathers work in academia and have known each other for 30 to 35 years. They routinely attend work-related gatherings and parties, usually accompanied by their wives. Sophie and I met at such an event. I went with my father because I wanted to meet a professor who could have helped me in my profession. Muriel substituted her mother because they had a scheduling difficulty and her mother could not attend, or so she was told. It turns out that her parents were going through a difficult time as a result of her father's adultery. Em just found out about this recently, when she discussed the concerns raised by her friend number 3 with her mother. This was an evident shock because her parents were the epitome of a perfect pair, a role model to emulate. They definitely patched things up, and they maintained the idea of a beautiful marriage throughout. 4. Apocalyptic horsemen. When you combine these with a therapist with questionable objectives, you have the makings of a breakup. The therapist was really excited to organize my open relationship. She validated what the friend stated: men like me will never be satisfied with one lady. I'll eventually look for more. There is only one way to fix my cheating tendencies. Sophie must sleep with other guys, at least until we are even. I will of course oppose it, but that is great. If I love Mel, I'll understand. This was a multi-layered concept. It will fix my unfaithful behavior, validate my love for her, and deepen our relationship as a result. This approach would have obviously failed, and I suppose this is exactly what the therapist was aiming for. Without a doubt, our relationship would have ended. What the therapist did not expect was how quickly I reacted. At least, this is my current hypothesis. The rest of the week we met on a daily basis, and she answered all of my questions. One thing was clear: while I was ready to end things, she was not. She was ready to battle for her life if it meant saving our relationship. At the end of the week, I had to depart for another city for work-related reasons, and I was gone for 1 month. The trip was supposed to last 2 weeks, but it had to be extended for an additional 2 weeks. More billable hours, hehe. Before leaving, I gave Sophie a copy of the therapy session tape. She knew I had it. It was one of the first topics I spoke with her when she arrived at my workplace on Monday. I believe listening to the recording rocked her to the core. What she remembered about the treatment session differed significantly from what was recorded. I believe she finally understood where all of my acts and conduct towards her originated from. People at home were aware of my work trip, and I was left on my own for the next 3 weeks. It was amazing that there was so little interruption. Several people in the comments volunteered to drink a beer with me if I ever visited their city. I approached someone the first time I met another Redditor. Surprisingly, not a weirdo, haha. He and his wife were nice folks. Sophie paid a visit during the 4th week. We had been in contact for the previous 3 weeks, exchanging thoughts on a variety of topics that were always about us. One significant issue needed to be resolved. After our wedding, we were going to go to France for 2 weeks as a honeymoon excursion. We couldn't do it right away after the wedding, so it was scheduled 3 months later and was approaching. We had non-refundable plane tickets. Why can firms do this? We had a hotel reservation. What we didn't have was ourselves. That 4th week, we chatted more and decided to go to France as friends. I can already imagine your eyes rolling as you read the final words. France was great. You visit a country like that and realize the US seems medieval in contrast. When you visit a museum, you can quickly recognize the Americans. How to behave in foreign countries should be a required instruction in our schools. We returned from France as a couple. This has nothing to do with the allure of Paris. There will, however, be a process. We are not back to our former selves. There is still some rebuilding to do. We agreed on several things, in no particular order. She is seeking a new job with less stress involved. Our friends in open marriages are now considered a toxic influence, and we will no longer socialize with them. Sophie is a name we both enjoy, and it will be used for our first daughter. Thank you, France. Never hide anything, such as a miscarriage, from your partner. This has enraged me to no end. We'll get a dog and a kitten. She will continue to visit her current therapist for a time. When we do get married, it will be a smaller ceremony with just us and our immediate family. We'll probably head to Italy next. I guess this isn't the exciting news everyone was looking for. Many people have asked for an update, and if you're seeking for fury, hatred, or revenge, I'm sure there's a version of this that allows for all of that and more. But, as I mentioned at the start, I didn't despise Sophie. At the time, my actions were motivated only by the desire to protect myself. Her actions indicated that she desired something other than what I assumed we both agreed on. There is nothing to be concerned about in terms of her mental state. After the vapors of her therapist's effects subsided, she returned to her former self, more or less. It is impossible not to be affected by these occurrences, yet she is in a good place. You will recall that she granted me power over her finances, the ability to follow her location at all times, and full access to all of her devices. Aside from my lack of interest in such a lifestyle, they were only an attempt to continue the topic. We all agree that we should be transparent about our gadgets, and for the record, we have always been open, so nothing will change here. Anyway, in terms of finances, we will continue to do what we have always done, share them. Betrayed by my sister and fiancé on my wedding day. Months later, he called me crying, but I was the one who got the last word. Okay, Here's my story about the wedding that never happened. It's the kind of thing you read about online and think, nah, that couldn't actually happen. But it did, to me. And truthfully, I still can't believe it. So let's go back a little bit. I'd been with Ethan since we were teenagers, and we'd been sweethearts in high school, college, and beyond. He was my first serious relationship, and for years, we were the pair that everyone envied. Or so I thought. We got engaged at 22 and expected to marry by 24. I assumed I knew him inside and out. We discussed everything, including future goals, travel fantasies, and baby names. It felt like my life was perfectly planned, and Ethan was present in every moment of it. But this is when things become odd. Ethan and my younger sister Leona were always close. They made a lot of jokes, texted each other and swapped memes. They'd even hang out alone occasionally, which I thought was sweet. You know, I think it's better when family and partners get along than hearing horror stories about in-laws that despise each other. So I never questioned their friendship. I wanted to be the cool fiancé, the one who is laid back and unconcerned. However, there were a few instances where things felt off. Leona's ex-boyfriends, for example, were all quite jealous of Ethan. They'd complained to her about how close she was to my fiancé, and I assumed they were simply insecure. I dismissed it as their problem, not mine. I absolutely trusted Ethan. But sometimes I'd notice small details, like how Ethan looked at Leona, or leaned in close while they chatted. Nothing big. Just little things that made me wonder. But I'd always convince myself, nah, you're just being paranoid. They're family now. And I'd let it go. Fast forward to the big wedding day, which was intended to mark the beginning of my new life. The day when everything finally came together. I was dressed, my makeup was done, and my hair was in place. I had spent months meticulously preparing every detail of this day, from the flowers to the reception soundtrack. My friends and family were swarming around, helping me get ready, and I was nervous but excited. As if the butterflies actually existed. As the time approached, I became concerned because I hadn't heard from Ethan all morning. Not even a, hey, can't wait to see you. But I thought, it's fine. He's probably just as nervous as I am. Maybe he's running around doing last-minute stuff. I wanted everything to be perfect, so I brushed it aside and kept getting ready. Finally the time arrived. I was supposed to be walking down the aisle in 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, I was standing in the rear area of the venue with my father, waiting for Ethan. I kept my phone on hand in case he texted or whatever. My father was talking, but I was hardly paying attention, staring at the door, waiting for Ethan to stroll in with that grin he always had. But then 10 minutes stretched into 15, then 20. At 25 minutes, my stomach began to flip. The coordinator came over and asked if we could postpone the ceremony. I began to panic a little. I asked if someone could check on Ethan, but they stated they couldn't find him. That's when things turned weird. I took out my phone and tried to call him directly to voicemail. Maybe his phone died. I tried the same thing again. Then I attempted to approach him on social media, and I discovered that he had blocked me on everything. My heart sank. I remember standing there, phone in hand, not really absorbing what was going on. For example, how would your fiancé obstruct you on your wedding day? In seconds, I went from bewildered to indignant to completely afraid. I mean, this was Ethan, my Ethan, the guy I had planned my entire life with. What was happening? I must have called him a dozen times hoping that it was a terrible mistake or a cruel joke. But no. Nothing. Just silence. My mother came over, anxious, and asked what was wrong, but I couldn't explain it to her. How can you tell your mother that your fiancé has abandoned you on your wedding day? Finally, my cousin Alan grabbed me aside. He gazed at me with pity in his eyes, as if he knew something horrible. That's when he told me he overheard some of the visitors discussing. Someone apparently witnessed Ethan and Leona leaving the venue early that morning. They were observed getting into his car together, laughing as if they had no worries in the world. I could not believe it. My own sister. I kept thinking there was no way. Not Leona. She would never do that to me. But the small stares, the hidden jokes, and the fact that she'd always been right there, just a little too close, started to make sense. I felt nauseous. Specifically physically sick. The room was whirling, and it took everything I had not to lose my cool in front of everyone. I stumbled out of the rear room, half walking and half sprinting. I just needed to get some air and get away from everyone. I did not want to trust what I had just heard. Part of me wondered whether it was all a misunderstanding and that they'd return and everything would be okay. But deep down, I knew. Ethan and Leona had planned it. They'd left me here, dressed and waiting, surrounded by friends and family, ready to run away together. I must have sat outdoors for hours, staring at my phone, hoping for a miracle text or some explanation. But there was nothing. Just silence. I watched as guests left, offering me pity looks, awkward hugs, and "I'm so sorry" glances. My mother kept stopping by and asking if I wanted to talk, but I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? My fiancé and my sister just ran off together, but hey, no big deal? Eventually, I was the last person at the venue. Just me, in my wedding gown, alone. I don't even remember arriving home. I must have been on autopilot, simply going through the motions. That night, I sat on the side of my bed, still dressed, and felt absolutely hollow. It felt as if all I'd believed in and planned had evaporated in a single, awful, humiliating second. And that was all. No wedding, no fiancé, no sister, just me, left to pick up the pieces after the disaster that was my wedding day. You'd think I'd hit rock bottom and then start to get back up, right? After being left alone in a dress in front of everyone I know, I feel as if there is nowhere lower to go. But no. It turned out that I was in for a whole new low. Initially, I was numb. I can't express how removed from reality I felt. My phone is constantly buzzing with texts and calls from people wanting to know what happened or giving their condolences, but I can't bring myself to answer. I turned it off and threw it away, attempting to deny that any of this was real. I didn't want to leave my room or talk to anyone. Everyone, including my family and friends, was reaching out. But what could they say to make things better? Then the shock faded, and it hit me. I was angry. Angry does not even begin to describe it. My thoughts was always filled with questions. Why? How could they do this to me? And what did I do wrong? I was losing sleep, repeating every memory, scrutinizing every minor encounter I'd had with Ethan and Leona, trying to figure out if there was something I'd overlooked, some hint I could have picked up earlier. It was agony, but my brain wouldn't let me release go. I guess I needed to find an explanation that would help me make sense of everything. Then I started doing what everyone warned me not to do. Stalking their social media. Yeah, I know, stupid decision. But I couldn't help it. I needed to know what they were up to, whether they were flaunting their relationship or had just gone off the grid. Leona had blocked me, so I used a friend's account to find her. There was nothing on her page, no posts, no images of Ethan, nothing. It was as if she had scrubbed her entire online presence clean. That made it worse since it felt like they were hiding something, leaving me in the dark with only my assumptions. I eventually reached a bizarre point where I wasn't just angry, but also embarrassed. I kept revisiting the wedding day, remembering how I'd sat there waiting like an idiot, completely unaware of what was going on. I could not get over the embarrassment of it all. People had flown in, dressed up, and invested their time and money to be there. And for what? For me to be humiliated in front of everybody. At some time, I realized I needed help. I was barely eating, didn't sleep, and felt like a shell of myself. A friend offered therapy, and at first I laughed it off. I didn't think speaking with someone would make a difference. It wasn't going to instantly restore my former life. But she persuaded me to attempt one session simply to get everything off my chest. That first session, I had no idea where to begin. I sat there for almost 10 minutes, staring at the wall and trying to figure out how to explain this disaster. When I finally opened up, it all came rushing out. Betrayal, fury, shame, everything. For the first time, someone listened. Listen without pity or judgment. I wouldn't say it fixed me, but it felt like I was releasing some of the weight I'd been carrying. I gradually began to seek out modest methods to repair myself. I resumed activities that had been put on hold throughout the wedding planning process, like joining a book club, attending a few local meetups, and attempting to reconnect with friends who had fallen by the wayside. I also started jogging in the mornings to clear my mind and begin each day with a new perspective. But mending was not a linear process in which I felt better each day. Some days I would feel fine, nearly normal. On other days the reality of it all would hit me like a truck. I'd consider how I was meant to be a wife by now, possibly even planning a family. And then I'd remember how I'd lost both Ethan and my sister. How do you possibly grieve when you lose both your fiancé and your sister in one move? Then there were the folks surrounding me. Some of my relatives attempted to be sympathetic, but they didn't truly understand. They'd say things like, "You're better off without him," or, "You'll find someone else." I knew they were attempting to assist, but it wasn't what I needed to hear. I needed to know why they did this, not be coaxed into moving on as if it was a horrible breakup or something. This wasn't only about losing a boyfriend. This was my entire future, and I had put my trust in two people I felt I could rely on. Throughout everything, my cousin Alan was a big help. He was the one who told me about Ethan and Leona leaving the venue, and he didn't sugarcoat anything. After that, he would let me vent, sit with me when I was having a rough day, and even encourage me to get out and do something enjoyable when I felt like hiding myself in my room. He's a quiet guy who doesn't like to talk about his feelings, yet he knew when I needed someone. I owe him a lot for it. Over time, I stopped checking their social media. I stopped thinking if they were happy together or still together. I thought it was only hurting me, and they didn't deserve to live rent-free in my head anymore. After a few months, I relocated to a new home, apartment, and neighborhood. Just a fresh start without having to remember all of my intentions with Ethan. Moving on wasn't easy, but I felt like I was finally getting somewhere, and I didn't need him or anybody else to do it. I won't lie, part of me still felt like I had lost something significant. I'd lost trust in people. I questioned everyone's intentions, including close friends, and wondered if they too would betray me. It's difficult to overcome that level of paranoia, and I'm still working on it. But I was learning to feel comfortable on my own. I was creating a life that did not involve any of them. And for the first time, it felt liberating, rather than tragic. By the end of the year, I had established my own routine, home, and life. It was not the life I expected, but it was mine. I had found calm in the strange knowledge that things don't always go as planned, but sometimes it's okay. Looking back, I am proud of how far I have come. That whole incident reduced me to nothing. But I did not stay there. I gradually rebuilt myself till I couldn't identify the person I used to be, which may be for the best. Months after regaining some sense of serenity, I was almost in a rhythm in which I didn't think about Ethan or Leona every day. I was working, seeing friends, going to the gym, and occasionally dating. Life was moving forward, slowly but steadily. Naturally, everything had to be interrupted. And of course, it was done by Ethan himself. One random Tuesday night, my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't respond, assuming it was simply another spam call. But something inside me was curious. I picked it up. "Hello?" I said, partially distracted. There was a gap before I heard Ethan's voice on the other end. "Hey, it's me." For a moment, I assumed it was a cruel joke. After all these months, my brain struggled to register that I was hearing his voice again. This was the guy who had left me alone in a bridal gown, the guy who had fled with my sister, and now he was acting like it was just a routine catch-up call. My stomach flipped, and all of the rage and hurt I had suppressed began to bubble up. "What do you want, Ethan?" I kept my voice cool, trying not to let him know how his call was reaching me. He sounded strange. His speech sounded harsh, as if he had been crying or hadn't slept in days. "I just wanted to talk. I know this is weird, but I need you to hear me out." My first instinct was to hang up right there. I did not owe him anything. But my curiosity got the best of me, and I figured what could possibly go wrong if I just listened to him. So I remained silent, waiting for him to reveal whatever he had to say. "I'm sorry," he said, hardly a whisper. "I know that doesn't even begin to cover it, but I needed to say it. I've been a mess, trying to figure out how I ended up here. And I finally read all those messages you sent me on our wedding day." I almost laughed. It took him this long to read the texts I wrote in despair, trying to keep him from fleeing away with my sister. I sent him everything I knew about Leona's falsehoods, her divorce, and the pregnancy rumors. He hadn't even bothered to read them before now. "What do you expect me to say, Ethan? You ran off with my sister on the day we were supposed to get married, and now you want to talk?" My voice was shaking, and I despised that he still had this impact on me. I know how it sounds. But I was wrong about everything. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you. I've spent months realizing how big of a mistake I made, and I know it's too late, but I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry." There was a long silence in which I had no idea what to say. He sounded real remorseful, but what changed? My life had been ripped apart, and his sorry was not going to make it better. Part of me wanted to yell at him, but I was too exhausted. So I let him speak. He began ranting about Leona, stating that things had not turned out to be the fairy tale he had hoped for. She'd apparently transformed into someone he scarcely recognized, constantly out with her pals, squandering his money and treating him like a piggy bank rather than a partner. I could sense the sadness in his voice, and it almost felt like justice. However, it did not erase what he had done to me. "You made your bed, Ethan," I finished, cutting him off. "You and Leona both, You hurt me in a way I didn't even know was possible. And now, just because you're unhappy, you want sympathy? No. I don't expect you to feel sorry for me. I miss you," he murmured, his voice breaking slightly. That was it for me. I almost laughed again, but this time it was out of aggravation rather than enjoyment. "You miss me? Are you kidding? You threw everything away for my sister Ethan. Whatever you're feeling right now, it's your problem, not mine." He was silent for a few moments before sighing. "I know I can't make it right. I just needed you to know that I regret it. I was stupid and blind, and I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." I sat there, phone in hand, unsure what to say. On the one hand, I had been waiting months for him to realize he had made a mistake. But now that I had it, it seemed hollow. His remorse did not relieve any of the pain. They did not make me feel better or repair the humiliation I had endured. "Look, Ethan," I began, attempting to maintain my voice. "I've moved on. My life isn't about you anymore, and I don't want to reopen old wounds. Whatever issues you have with Leona, they're yours to deal with. I've got my own life now." He did not argue. I didn't push. He let out a big sigh, as if he knew it was the end. "I understand, I won't bother you again," he said, sounding deflated. With that, he hung up. I just sat there, staring at my phone and trying to digest everything. In some ways, it felt like a satisfying conclusion, but it also brought back memories I thought I had buried. I didn't expect to feel that much after that call. But there I was, overwhelmed by recollections of all the plans we'd made and the betrayal he'd left behind. It was like pulling open a sore that had just healed. But as the days passed, I found I wasn't as bothered by it. Hearing him apologize and hear the regret in his voice did not make everything better, but it did help me let go of any remaining animosity. I didn't need vengeance or retaliation. I didn't need him to be unhappy. I just wanted to know that I was done with him for good. Following that call, I blocked his number. I wasn't going to allow him come back into my life whenever he felt like it. I was finally at a point where I felt like I could breathe again, and he was not going to take it away from me. That chapter was closed, locked, and thrown away. Looking back, I realized the call was just what I needed. Not because I wanted him back or his apologies, but because it proved that I had made the right decision in letting him go. I assumed that after Ethan's call I'd finally have some peace, as if it was the last bit of closure I needed. But I didn't anticipate the conflict developing with my family. Of course, it wasn't enough for Ethan to appear out of nowhere. My family had to get engaged too. My mom contacted me the day following Ethan's call. At first it was a basic text. "Hey, we haven't talked in a while. How are you?" Which was far too casual given what had happened. We hadn't been on speaking terms since the wedding debacle. My family attempted to remain neutral throughout it all. But neutral always meant backing Leona up. After everything she had done, they pretended it was just a misunderstanding and asked me to dismiss it. So certainly I had kept my distance. But here's the thing. When my mother messaged me, I still felt a flicker of hope. I assumed she was reaching out to finally realize what I had gone through, to take my side for once. So, like an idiot, I responded. And before I knew it, we were preparing a family meal at my parents' home. I told myself that this could be the moment they realized what I had gone through. I would finally be able to receive the validation I had been seeking for so long. I arrived at their house feeling both nervous and excited. Walking in, I could feel all of my old memories, of joyful family dinners, movie evenings, holidays, and times when I thought we were a strong family. But as soon as I sat down, I sensed something was amiss. My parents were overly stiff. My mother was making small chat, asking about work and my friends. But there was a certain sharpness in her voice that I couldn't ignore. Then without warning, she mentioned Ethan. I felt my stomach drop. She wanted to know why he contacted me and what we discussed. Apparently she had heard from someone, most likely Leona, that we had been in communication. It felt strangely invasive, as if she had the right to know every element of my personal life. "Why does it matter, Mom?" I responded, attempting to maintain my composure. "I haven't been with Ethan in ages. You guys know that." Mother sighed, giving me the same expression Mother used to give me when I got a B on a school test, as if I had disappointed her by not doing exactly what she anticipated. "It just feels like you're stirring up old wounds, you know? You've moved on. Leona has moved on, and..." So there it was. Leona. Everything always seemed to return to her. Leona had gone on, so I was expected to continue as if I hadn't been the one who had been betrayed. As if I was still clinging on to this for drama or something. "I'm not the one who reached out," I responded, trying not to sound angry. "Ethan called me out of nowhere. I didn't even want to talk to him." My father cleared his throat, appeared uncomfortable, but jumped in anyway. "You know, honey, maybe it's time we all just let this go. Leona's still family, and she's had her own struggles. Can't we all just put this behind us?" That's when I understood they weren't reaching out to make amends. They weren't seeking for my side or opinion. They just wanted me to forgive and forget so that things would be easier for them. They wanted me to go so they wouldn't have to deal with this nasty, uncomfortable family drama. Leona might be forgiven for anything, but I was the one harboring resentment. "Are you serious?" I inquired, my voice beginning to shake. "She's still family? I was supposed to marry Ethan. She ran off with my fiancé, left me standing there like an idiot, and you think I'm the one who should just move on like it's nothing?" They looked at each other and then back at me. My mother gave me a sad little smile, as if she were dealing with a difficult child. "Sweetheart, we know it was hard on you. But Leona is still our daughter, and she needs support too." I simply stared at them, startled. The message was clear. I was supposed to take the high road, suck it up, and be the greater guy. They were worried about Leona, not me. This is not what I went through. Leona, the golden child, could do no wrong in their eyes, even though she stabbed me in the back. Something within me cracked. I pulled back my chair and stood up, my hands shaking. "I'm done," I said, my voice louder than my emotions. "You're asking me to ignore everything she did, to pretend like none of this happened just because it makes you uncomfortable. Well, guess what? I'm not just moving on because it's convenient for you." My mother tried to say something, but I stopped her. I collected my belongings and walked away, leaving them astonished. I'd always been the quiet, agreeable one who never made a fuss. But at that point, I realized I couldn't be that person anymore. They urged me to give up my personal serenity and feelings for the sake of keeping the family together. And I wasn't about to do it. The ride home was a haze. I was angry, hurt, and mostly sad. It's unfortunate that my own parents were unable to see what I had been through. They were so focused on protecting Leona that they couldn't be there for me. It was like losing them all over again. At the same moment, there was a strange feeling of relief. I felt like I had finally made a position for myself, even if it meant burning some bridges. For the next 3 days I did not return their calls or SMS. They left voicemails and sent lengthy notes, but I couldn't bring myself to listen or read any of them. I was fatigued and emotionally depleted after years of putting myself last to keep them happy, and I didn't want to continue doing so. A few days later, my cousin Alan reached out. Alan had been my anchor since the wedding debacle, the one family member who didn't put pressure on me to move on or be pleasant. He did not try to lecture me or make excuses for anybody. He was just listening. When I informed him about the family supper, he did not seem startled. If anything, he appeared to be expecting it. "They've always had a soft spot for Leona," he admitted, shaking his head. "But you don't have to put up with it. You've done enough." Hearing that from someone who knew my situation felt like a lifeline. He reminded me that it was all right to set limits and safeguard my own tranquility. For so long, I'd been striving to make everyone else happy, and now he was giving me permission to finally prioritize myself. And that's when it struck me. I no longer needed their approbation. I didn't need them to understand, apologize, or make things right. I could let go without their consent. For the first time in a long time, I felt in command of my own narrative. So maybe I was addressing the past. But this time, it was on my terms, which was far more restorative than any apology they could have given me. When I thought I'd finally gotten away from all the drama, my phone rang with a message that felt like a blow in the gut. It was from my mother, who had obviously been holding out until now. The message reads, "We've been trying to reach you. It's time to stop avoiding this and come back to your family. Leona is your sister, and families forgive each other. If you can't let this go and make peace with Leona, then maybe you're not interested in being part of this family." I stared at my phone, felt my heart drop. After everything I'd gone through, they were now threatening me, pressuring me to forgive or risk being disowned. It was as if the months I'd spent recovering and standing firm had meant nothing to them. I took a few long breaths, feeling both angry and sad. Why was it so simple for them to support Leona? She was the one who deceived me, but they acted as if I was the criminal here. I contacted my cousin Alan, the only family member who had consistently supported me. He picked up on the first ring. "They're giving me an ultimatum, Alan," I remarked without a hello. There was stillness on the line, followed by a deep sigh. I had a feeling they'd pull something like this. They're trying to guilt you into coming back. They don't want to lose their image of a happy family, even if it means completely disregarding what you went through. I felt a knot in my throat and resisted the temptation to scream. How can they just act like none of this was a big deal? I mean, I was left at my own wedding. Leona and Ethan didn't just hurt me. They humiliated me. And they want me to just let it all go because it's easier for them? Alan said, "If you forgive Leona, then they don't have to deal with the reality of what she did. They get to pretend it was just a mistake and move on. They're doing this for themselves, not for you." Hearing it stated so simply helps. He was correct. My family did not seek for my forgiveness because they cared about me. Rather, they did so because they did not want to face the repercussions of their own failure to hold Leona accountable. "Look, you know what you need to do," Alan said. "You've been making a new life for yourself. You're building something without them. If they can't respect your boundaries, then maybe they don't deserve to be part of that life." It dawned on me that I'd been hoping that my parents would eventually take my side, that they'd realize what I'd been through, how much Leona had hurt me, and stand up for me. But that was only a fantasy. They were never going to change, and continuing in their life would only keep me hurting. I took a deep breath and nodded to myself. "You're right, Alan. It's time I let go for real this time." That night, I sat down with a piece of paper and began writing. It seemed a little absurd at first, like I was in a movie, but it was the only way I could let everything out. I jotted down everything: how betrayed I'd felt by Leona and Ethan, how ashamed I'd been that day, and how wounded I was that they'd supported Leona. I told them that if they couldn't respect my feelings, or realize what I'd gone through, there was nothing else to say. When I finished, I read it again, my hands shaking slightly. But when I reread my thoughts, I realized how much I'd been keeping back, all the hurt, rage, and disappointment. Everything was there on the page. This was my chance to truly let go, to stop looking back and begin moving forward without the burden of their expectations and demands. The following day, I mailed the letter. I did not expect them to comprehend. I did not expect an apology or even a response. This was for me, a final way to draw a line and protect myself from further harm. And despite the difficulty, I felt lighter knowing that I had completed my task. In the weeks that followed, my family made every effort to contact me. My father sent emails. Messages from my mother appeared on all social media platforms, and even distant relatives began to reach out. They were all saying the same thing. I was being stubborn, and I needed to make amends with Leona for the sake of the family. However, none of it shook me. I'd said my piece, and for the first time, I felt at ease with it. Alan kept me posted on what was going on, and it appeared that Leona was still playing the victim, as if I was the one causing the family division. According to what I've heard, my parents were constantly making excuses for her, dismissing her actions as a mistake of youth, or anything similar. It was frustrating. But I recognized that was their problem, not mine. I immersed myself into my new life, focused on what truly brought me joy. I became more interested at work, took on new projects, and even met a few close friends who had no idea about my history, and simply viewed me for who I was. For once, I was living for myself rather than trying to conform to someone else's expectations of who I should be. Then one evening, while out with my new buddies, my phone buzzed. I looked down to see an email notification from my father. I felt a pang of guilt. But then I recalled myself of all the suffering I'd been through, all the times I'd been told to just let it go for their sake. I realized I couldn't go back to that. I erased the email without reading it, and felt a strange sensation of joy. I was finished with their guilt trips and demands. Life continued to move forward. Every day felt brighter and easier after I stopped looking back and focused on what I desired. Sure, there were times when I felt a tinge of sadness, a reminder of what I had lost. But then I'd remember everything I'd gained: independence, peace, and the opportunity to be myself with no strings attached. In the end, breaking away was the most difficult and rewarding thing I'd ever done. It was not the life I had envisioned, but it was one I had created on my own terms. For the first time in a long time, I felt satisfied. Family ghosted me in a reunion I paid for, asked me to forgive sister for stealing my money. So I gave them an invoice at dinner, called the cops. I should have realized something was wrong the instant I turned into the parking lot. There are no recognizable cars, No commotion, no cousins smoking near the bins while pretending no one is looking. Just silence. I checked the message again. Friday at 7 p.m. Mateos. Cannot wait to see everyone. Sent by Mom. 2 weeks ago. It was Friday at 7:02 p.m. I was exactly on time. Like an idiot. When I stepped inside, the frigid air gave way to mellow jazz and clinking drinks. The place wasn't completely vacant, but the private room I had paid for was locked. Dark. "Can I help you, sir?" the hostess inquired, scarcely looking up. "Yeah. Thompson party, private dining room?" She studied the list. "Oh yeah. That was last night." I blinked. No, it was tonight. I paid the deposit. I booked it." She tilted her head. "Sir, they were here. 16 people, big cake. Your mom brought place cards. Are you sure you're not confused?" I laughed. Actually, I laughed. One of those dry, stinging ones that expires halfway through your mouth. "No, I'm not confused." She paused, feeling embarrassed. "Do you want to call someone?" I did not respond to her. I was already dialing. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Hi, sweetie," Mom murmured, her voice too light and casual. "Everything okay?" I looked straight ahead. "Where is everybody?" A pause. She then offered that airy little laugh she always used when she knew she'd made a mistake but didn't want to confess it. "Oh honey, it was yesterday. We thought you weren't coming. But don't worry, we'll bring you leftovers." I froze. "What?" She repeated it as if it were no great issue. "It was yesterday. We'll bring you leftovers." I did not even say goodbye. I just hung up. Nobody called back. Not Mom. Not Rachel. Not anyone. Then a text appeared. Rachel Lomeo. "Bro, you really missed it. Classic. Do not worry, we saved you one roll." I couldn't tell if my hand was shaking due to cold or wrath. I looked at the hostess. "They came, they ate, they left." She shrugged. "Looked like they were having fun." Of course they did. They usually do when I am not present. I went without saying anything more. Did not call, yell or write in the group chat. But I did not go home either. I sat in the car with the engine turned off, staring at my reflection in the glass, thinking about the bill, the card charge, and the 10 unread texts I'd sent my mother 3 days ago to confirm the time. They all knew. They simply didn't care. They had made that decision together. And tomorrow, I'd make my. You'd think being excluded from a paid-for family dinner would be the worst part. It was not. It was the cherry on top of a 5-year rubbish sundae. This was not the first time they had left me out. Not even close. It was the first time they had been honest enough not to fake it. I was always an afterthought. Growing up, Rachel was the bright one who only needed a little help getting started. I was the one who did not require much. That was their code for, "You can thrive without love, so we won't waste it on you." When I obtained my first real job, I called Mom with pride. She did not say congratulations. She responded, "Great. Now you can finally help your sister with rent." That was the beginning of it. 1 month's rent evolved into a year. Bills came next. Then she underwent dental surgery. Next, consider car insurance. Then came textbooks for her new nursing program, which she dropped after 1 semester and never reimbursed me for. I paid because I believed it was what you did when you love your family. But love in my family only goes one way. Every time I mentioned it, even gently, I was slammed with, "Stop being so transactional. We're family. Rachel is going through a lot. You know that. You're doing better than her. Why are you keeping score?" I was not keeping score. They simply refused to recognize I was bleeding. I recall one night, 2 years ago. I had just wired Rachel $600 for her emergency vet cost. Later that day, she shared an Instagram story featuring new shoes, new nails, and a guy's hand wrapped around a champagne glass. I showed Mom the story. She scrolled, smirked, and replied, "You boys always get so petty about money." Petty. I paid their property taxes last winter since Dad forgot, and the county issued a lien warning. I covered Rachel's credit card minimums for 6 months after she was laid off, despite the fact that I was barely getting by myself. One Christmas, I depleted my savings to buy gifts for everyone. So what did I get? A framed family photo. I wasn't in it. But nothing compared to the night I found out what they truly thought of me. It was approximately 6 months ago. I was staying at my parents' place for the weekend. I had just bailed Rachel out of another jam, this time with $1,200, after she had mistakenly overdrafted again. I walked downstairs to get some water and heard voices in the living room. Rachel responded, "He's so obsessed with being the martyr. It's pathetic." She replied, "I know. He acts like he's some kind of savior just because he pays for things." He was chuckling. "Let him pay. He's not going to find a wife anyway. Might as well be useful." First. Stood in the hall, paralyzed. Rachel repeated smugly, "You know he thinks we'd fall apart without him." Snort. "Please. If he disappeared tomorrow, I wouldn't even notice." I didn't enter the room. I went back upstairs, lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. Mom made pancakes the next morning as if nothing had happened. Following that, I stopped sending money for nearly 2 weeks. Then, Rachel texted, "Rachel, I need help with my rent. I will pay you back. Promise." I did not respond. 2 days later, Mom called. "Mom, Rachel's behind on bills. She's in a really bad place. You know she's sensitive. Why are you being cold?" I responded, "I just can't keep doing this." Her response was, "If you're going to punish us for raising you, maybe we shouldn't have bothered." That broke me worse than I realized at the time. I sent the money later in the day. After all that, they held a family reunion without me. I paid for my dinner. I confirmed a specific time. When I contacted Mom to see where they were, she had the audacity to say, "It was yesterday. We'll bring you leftovers." Leftovers. Like a dog. Not a son. Not a brother. Simply a wallet with arms. I sat in the car outside Mateo's for a long time that night. I did not cry. I did not yell. I sat in that heavy, dense silence, thinking about every time I'd been the nice guy and how much it had cost me. Tomorrow, I would not be the good one. Tomorrow they'd discover what it's like when I stop performing my role, and I knew just where to start. I did not sleep that night. Not because I was sad, not even mad. Honestly, I was calculating. After tax and tip, my dinner at Mateo's came to $1,740. 16 persons. Appetizers. Menu can be customized. I'd even paid more for Rachel's vegan food and Aunt Mary's wine allergy accommodations. They did not simply forget me. They knew, yet they did it nonetheless. The following morning, I sent a message to the family group chat. Me. Let's meet at Mom's tonight at 7 p.m. I've got something for you. Nobody inquired what it was. Of course they did not. They never asked me any questions. At 6:58 I parked into my folks' driveway. Inside they had already gathered. Rachel was on the phone. Dad was in his recliner, drinking a beer. Mom fluffed the couch pillows as if we were expecting company. She looked up and grinned. "Hi, honey. We weren't sure if you'd still be upset." I said nothing. Rachel looked up. Phony sympathy pasted across her cheeks. "You know we didn't do it to hurt you," she told me. "It was just easier for everyone to come Thursday. Most of us have lives." She said this with a straight face. I placed a large envelope on the coffee table. "What's this?" Mom inquired. I sat down gently and calmly, saying, "It's a bill." Dad scoffed. "A bill for what?" "For dinner," I responded. "The one you all enjoyed without me." Rachel laughed. "You're joking." "I'm not." Mom narrowed her eyes. "Are you seriously trying to make us pay you back?" "No," I replied, leaning forward. "I'm giving you the opportunity. Because from now on, anything you want from me comes with an invoice." There was quiet. Then Dad sat up straighter. "You need to drop this attitude, son. We're family, right?" I responded. "Family? The same family that intentionally excluded me from a reunion I paid for? The same family that's drained me financially and emotionally for 5 years straight?" Rachel rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on. No one made you pay." That's when something inside me snapped. I stood up. "You know what? Fine. Let's talk about what no one made me do." I pointed at Rachel. "I wasn't made to pay your rent for 2 years, or cover your overdraft fees, or replace your transmission." I turned to Mom. "I wasn't made to cover your back taxes, or pay for your birthday cruise when you said Dad forgot, or pick up groceries when you suddenly couldn't walk because of your knee." Dad's face became red. "Watch it." "Oh, I'm just getting started," I explained, pulling out a printed list from my pocket. "You don't want to hear it? I do. I've had to live it." And then comes the twist. I took out a folder and tossed it onto the table. "What's this now?" Dad demanded. I smiled. "Documentation of every single transaction. Every wire, every Venmo, every Cash App, every receipt. Rachel snorted. Wow. You really are insane. No, I replied, dead calm. I'm protected. Because I filed a fraud report this morning. All of this. I clicked on the folder. It's already in the system. What are you talking about? Mom inquired, her voice becoming hushed. I stared her directly in the eyes. Last week, I found out someone used my name to open a new credit card. The same one that paid for a new iPhone and a spa package Rachel posted about but claimed was a gift from a friend. Rachel froze. I called the credit company. They're investigating it as identity theft. The address they gave them? Yours. She stood up. Are you kidding me? Nope, I replied. And if you think I won't press charges. You wouldn't dare, Mom hissed. Try me. The room exploded. Rachel yelled. You're pathetic, Dad shouted. You want to send your own sister to jail? You want me to keep playing the idiot? Forever? I responded. Mother burst into tears. You're destroying this family. No, I replied, going toward the door. I'm finally saving myself from it. And now for the second twist. As I turned away, someone spoke for the first time. My cousin, Luke. The quiet one. He rarely speaks out at family gatherings. I'd like to pay my share, he stated softly. Of the dinner. I mean, it's only fair. Everyone looked at him, shocked. He added, and I know I should have said something, but they did plan to exclude you. I was there when they joked about it. Said you'd be too dramatic. I'm sorry. I looked at him and smiled for the first time that night. Thanks. Then I walked out. They felt they could utilize me indefinitely. But they forgot one thing. Even the quiet ones finally talk. And when we do not whisper. We called the cops. My phone buzzed the next morning at 8:17 a.m. This is a private number. I picked it up. Hi, is this Ethan Thompson? Yes. This is Officer Reynolds, local precinct. We're currently following up on a report of financial fraud involving a credit card opened in your name. Your family was listed at the billing address. We'll be visiting the property today for a statement. I didn't say anything for a moment. Then, do you need me there? No, sir. You've done your part. We'll take it from here. I hung up and sat in silence. For once, they'd open the door and discover someone they couldn't gaslight. This time, I didn't need to talk. The police handled everything for me. I believed that stillness would bring serenity. Instead, it created mayhem. They say that removing the keystone from an arch causes everything to collapse. I was not the keystone. I was the entire basis. And the second I stepped away, the house of cards collapsed. The police visit was not subtle. Mom left a long, angry voicemail stating that they arrived at 7:45 a.m., while she was still wearing her robe. Dad had not even had his coffee yet. 2 officers, 1 male and 1 female, polite but direct. We're following up on an identity theft claim. The credit card was opened in your son's name. It was used for over $4,000 worth of purchases tied to this address. We need to know who had access. Mom's response. There must be some mistake. We're a good family. Classic. They asked to talk with everyone in the house. Rachel attempted to leave in the middle of the chat, claiming she had work. The officers asked her to stay. She cracked within 5 minutes. It wasn't even fraud. He always helps. I thought he wouldn't mind. Mom jumped in. She's under stress. She didn't mean it. Unfortunately, it was too late. The officer documented everything, videotaped it, and even demanded to see Rachel's phone. That's when things became worse. They discovered text messages from Rachel to her friend. Use my brother's information to plan a spa day for him. IDC. He is such a pushover. He will not even notice. It wasn't all fraud. It was premeditated. And that was proof. The same day, I received a call from a detective assigned to the case. We have enough to move forward with charges. Would you like to proceed formally? I requested him to grant me 1 day. That evening, my phone exploded. 27 missed calls. 41 messages. Mom. Ethan, please, we need to talk. It was just a mistake. She panicked. She's still your sister. Dad. You don't want to destroy her life over this. Rachel. You selfish guy. I'll lose my job, my apartment. You're doing this to your own family. It's funny how no one cared when I was losing pieces of myself for them. I waited 1 day. I then called the detective back. Can we pause the formal charge temporarily? He agreed, but he said it clearly. This doesn't go away. It just waits. That was when Mom made her move. She called me, her voice as delicate as silk across a razor. If you really want to fix things, come to the house. Let's talk face to face. Despite my better judgment, I went. I regretted it from the moment I stepped inside. Rachel sat on the couch with a blanket over her, as if she were the victim. Mom had the worried matriarch looking down to a science. Dad did not even get up. We just want to heal, Mom remarked. We? I inquired. We know you're hurt, but this is tearing the family apart. No, I replied. Rachel did that. Rachel's voice cracked. I didn't think you'd actually go to the cops. Who does that? Someone who's been pushed far enough, I said. Mom reached for my hand. Let's make this go away. We'll pay it back. You don't need the police. Funny, I said. Because you didn't offer that before they showed up. She jerked away as if I had slapped her. Dad finally spoke. You're not perfect either. You think this makes you some kind of hero? I stared him in the eyes. It makes me free. And then I left. Again. This time. For good. A week has gone. I received another call from the detective. We received a payment for the charges. Marked anonymous, but it came from a joint account under your parents' names. Would you like to press charges anyway? I thought for a long time. Then I replied, no. But then I added, not this time. But I want it on record. If she ever touches anything with my name again, I want her charged. He agreed, so I hung up. And with that, I was finished with them. There's no more money. No more guilt. No more walking into rooms and being invisible until someone wanted their phone bill paid. A new start. I relocated out of the state 2 weeks later. Small town, quiet, friendly landlord. Rent is half what I paid at home. I spent my first weekend putting together IKEA furniture and listening to old songs that I hadn't heard since college. I went grocery shopping and got what I wanted. I sat on my own couch, with coffee and a book, and no one knocked to ask for help. And for the first time in a decade, I realized I was only accountable for myself. But here's the kicker. 3 weeks into my new existence, I received a letter. Handwritten. There's no return address. Inside is a folded piece of paper and a checkbook. The paper stated, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I appreciate you taking the risk that I never would have taken. Luke. The check was for half of Mateo's bill. I smiled. He did not owe me anything. But he got it. And what about the rest? I never heard from them again. Not on my birthday. Not for Christmas. Not even when Dad underwent surgery later that year. I only found out after seeing a distant cousin's Facebook post. And you know what? Good. They had now experienced what it was like to live without me. I had finally learned to live without them. People say that blood is thicker than water. They forget the second half of this quote. But the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. In other words, chosen loyalty is more important than common DNA. And I learned this the hard way. The last time I saw my family's faces was the day I left the house, clutching the folder and feeling the burning in my chest. What happened since then? Not one word. And the stillness used to feel like punishment. Now it feels like air. A few weeks ago, I ran into someone from my hometown. A girl I attended high school with. She recognized me in the checkout line at the hardware store. Hey, didn't you used to be Rachel's brother? I paused and smiled. No. Just like that. There is no shame. Without hesitation. Because I am not Rachel's brother anymore. I am not a decent son. I am not the bank. I'm not the person who shows up when everyone else is gone. I'm me. And for the first time in 32 years, that is sufficient. They believed I couldn't survive without them. That I would crawl back. That I required their brand of love, their guilt trips masquerading as concern, and their control disguised as intimacy. They were wrong. I don't need Sunday dinners where I sit silently while others toast themselves. I don't need check-ins that are essentially setups for a request. I don't need to explain why I changed my phone number, relocated without a forwarding address, or didn't show up for Christmas. Let them ponder. Let them stew. Allow them to explain my absence to extended family, neighbors, and themselves. They are aware deep within themselves. They shoved me outside. And for once, I did not beg to return. Want to know the best part? They lost control the moment I stopped asking for love and instead demanded respect. Because people like that will use their families as weapons against you. However, the moment you disregard boundaries, they label you as cold, selfish, and broken. I am none of those things. I'm finally no longer theirs. And Rachel? She did not lose her job. She did not go to jail. But you know what? She did lose her mask. The entire family now understands what she did, how she lied, how she abused me, and how she laughed behind my back while draining me dry. And now no one trusts her. Luke exited the house. Aunt Lydia won't let her babysit anymore, Uncle Brian told me during a quick phone conversation. I didn't expect that. Rachel's name is mud at every family event. You don't need to come back, he told me. They're the ones who messed up, we all see it now. But I told him the same thing that I'll tell you. It doesn't matter who sees it. The question is who made it out alive. So I did. So, no, I am not going to pretend everything is wonderful. I am not going to send birthday cards or pick up because of guilt. I'm not going to come up to fake embraces and awkward potlucks so mom can make passive-aggressive statements about how difficult it is to keep families together nowadays. I'm no longer theirs. And it's the best thing that has ever happened to me. I wake up now, and there is tranquility. I work and keep whatever I earn. I eat whatever I want. I do not apologize for saying no. I don't flinch when my phone vibrates. I don't hold my breath around folks who say they love me. I am free. Not because they let me go. However, I ultimately quit waiting for their consent. Allow them to keep their leftover dinners. Allow them to pass around my photo as if I had died. Let them chatter. Let them beg, rant, twist the story, and label me the villain. I will still sleep like a baby. Because the truth is easy. When they closed the door on me, I did not lose any family members. They lost me. And that is the first bill that they will never pay.